Chapter 941. The moment his fist made contact with his eye, Evil Sword God was like the incarnation of Daigu's Ultraman Tiga in the middle of the crowd, and an invisible sword chi swept through the area, blowing away countless fat shut-ins around him like they were grains of sand. The arrival of this powerful aura silenced all the group leaders on Detention Island. For a moment, none of them who had stepped forward to humiliate him, or join in on the fun dared move as they froze on the spot. A bunch of arrogant people, you actually dare to make fun of this venerable self? You actually dare to make fun of this venerable self? 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 Venerable self? The familiar echo reverberated in Confinement Island's space, and several tens of sword chi swept out in all directions. The clothes of several tens of fat shut-ins were all stripped by the sword chi. Although Evil Sword God had already become that familiar Evil Sword God, the old devil and Chengyu were still sharing their minds at that moment, and they were reminding Evil Sword God not to kill anyone here. Now that they were atoning for their crimes, they had to be more careful about their behavior. Although these people were disgusting and could be punished lightly, it wasn't to the point where they had to atone for their crimes with death. Evil Sword God stomped on these people. He didn't have a sword in his hand, but he had a sword in his heart. Everyone felt a chill on their necks, as if a sword was pressed against their necks. With just a wink from this man, he could chop off their heads. At the same time, this scene was also seen by Huang Yuliang in the van. He was equally afraid. Evil Sword God was so famous that even in Baoan province, Huang Yuliang had heard of his fearsome reputation. Suddenly, he was very glad that he had been born in this era of order and law. Otherwise, if it had been in the past, people would have long since come knocking on his door with a sword to chop off his head if his mouth was so stinky. Where would his kindness and compassion come from? Perhaps this wasn't the best era, but it was definitely the most forgiving. Where there was forgiving, there was impudence. As the saying went, a kind person would be bullied, and a kind horse would be ridden. Those online ghostwriters and keyboard warriors, weren't they the consumer's tolerance towards strangers? Evil Sword God didn't need to make an example of Wang Ling. Just his aura alone was enough to intimidate the whole of Detention Island. I know you, and some of you probably know me. I'm not here today to find you, but for one thing. Evil Sword God stared at everyone in a domineering manner, and solemnly said one word. Fairness. Then he started to repeat and emphasize, fairness. It's still F*King fair. Gong gong ping. Someone muttered quietly, a bit confused. Those of you who have joined the governor's internet water army as group leaders are cursing people who have nothing to do with you through the screen. You even curse people's relatives, making them so angry that they don't have the heart to study or work. Learn. It was the ladder of human progress. Work. It was the driving force behind the country's GDP. Just because you slandered people through the screen, and even ignored some of the indiscriminate opportunists who took the lead in spreading rumors. When you say these things, have you ever thought about how much trouble your words will cause for others in society? Aren't you just relying on the tolerance of strangers, and the fact that they can't find you through the screen to say whatever you want? Do you think this is fair? Evil Sword God spoke righteously and passionately. Of course, it wasn't Evil Sword God himself who had said these words, but General Bai had prepared them beforehand. Evil Sword God just needed to read them out loud through the old devil's mind-sharing. They were still atoning for their crimes, so they still had to follow the procedure. It could only be said that General Bai, the strongest of the 10 generals, was in the end explosion saint. His words were like a nuclear bomb in the hearts of these group leaders, shattering their spirits and leaving them with bruises all over their bodies. Listen up, all of you. I'm going to ask you questions now, and I need you to answer them truthfully. This is also your last chance to atone for your crimes. Evil Sword God said, currently, the country is cracking down hard on online keyboard warriors. After you get out, you'll be locked up for several years, but if you plead guilty and have a good attitude, it might only take a few months. Group leaders and fat shut-ins looked at each other. Evil Sword God's words had flushed them red, and they felt too ashamed to show their faces. Then what should we do? Someone asked. First question, who can explain this island to me? As soon as Evil Sword God opened his mouth, a lot of people in the know scrambled to raise their hands. They were fighting for a chance to have their sentences reduced. Go ahead. Evil Sword God pointed at a fatty who only had one hair on his head. We didn't know where this place was at first, but one thing for sure is that we've already been abandoned by the governor. Furthermore, the people here are all group leaders of the Water Army Group. They were imprisoned here because they accidentally revealed the organization's secrets. This person answered truthfully. There's a canteen and an internet cafe on this closed island. The canteen is operated by machines and provides hamburgers and fat otaku cola. But these things aren't free. We have to go to the internet cafe to play games, clear dungeons, and get equipment, and then use contribution points to exchange for them. Do you have a chance to get out? Evil Sword God asked again. Not for the time being, but if we can reach 100 million contribution points, we can regain our freedom. One Hair said. Hearing this, Evil Sword God as well as the old devil and Chengyu, who were escorting the van, all nodded. The situation was pretty much the same as they had deduced, except for a few discrepancies. This was a detention island for group leaders, but it wasn't a gathering place for the Water Army, but a place of punishment, where group leaders who had almost revealed the secrets of the online Water Army were imprisoned. In other words, these group leaders knew some secrets that no one else knew. Thus, it couldn't be any better to use them as targets for investigation. Then Evil Sword God ordered these fat shut-ins to line up. Pointing to the first person, he said, "We'll start with you. Tell me who you are, what you did as a Water Army group leader, what's your relationship with the governor, and whether you've met him before." All right, the first person nodded, then said timidly, "I am Ding Lishi. I previously organized people to go to Dubon to leave bad comments. I'm only on average with the governor, and only spoke to him once through the screen. The governor is very mysterious and doesn't meet people easily." Next. Evil Sword God nodded. "I was a group leader who specialized in mobilizing group members to send scam text messages. Your Water Army is also in charge of this. We have a specialized group of scam water armies." This person said, "And the text messages we send are basically the same." "What text messages?" "Hello, I'm Qin Shi Huang. I've transmigrated back, but now I'm penniless. I need to use my tyrannical aura to go to Xi, and then activate the Terracotta Army. Please send me the money immediately. It's not much, just 50,000. Once it's done, I'll lead a team over and appoint you as the commander of the Imperial Army." Evil Sword God chuckled. "What day and age are we in? There are still people who believe this? I don't know if there are people who believe it, but there's something in it that's true." "What is it?" The second person stepped forward and shook hands with Evil Sword God. "Hello, Lord Sword God, I'm Ying Zheng, Evil Sword God." Tianjin. Chapter 942. The Ying Zheng in front of him was very fat, which was a little different from what Evil Sword God had imagined. It was probably because he ate junk food on Group Leader Detention Island, and didn't exercise properly. Evil Sword God didn't doubt the words of this man who called himself Qin Shi Huang. His purple investigative demon eyes could detect lies, and it was clear that the person in front of him wasn't lying to him. Furthermore, Evil Sword God didn't sense any spirit chi from this person. It was now an era of national cultivation, and even body-tempering cultivators would have faint fluctuations of spirit chi on them. If there wasn't even the slightest bit of it, this person was either an alien or had transmigrated from ancient times. "How did you get here?" "Someone summoned me here with a holy relic," Emperor Qin replied. "What about the person who summoned you?" "I heard that I was eliminated in the first round of the Holy Grail War. This emperor can't go back. This era is much more prosperous than I imagined. This emperor settled down here. I share the memories of this era with the person who summoned me, so I can also recognize the language of this era. Unfortunately, after the summoner died, this emperor had no place to stay and was penniless. I didn't know how to go back, so in order to settle down I started to fabricate text messages saying that I was Emperor Qin." Evil Sword God turned pale with fright. It turned out that this famous text message had really been written by Emperor Qin himself at this point. A disappointed look emerged on Ying Zheng's face as he continued. But who would have thought that such an outrageous message could spread so far? Later on, this governor came to me. He believed that I have the potential to be a text message scammer, so he appointed me as the group leader. I had the group members write text messages every day and spread them out to fish. Evil Sword God, the old devil and Chengyu were all stunned when they heard this. They hadn't expected there to be so many strange people among the Water Army group leaders. If you stay here, you'll disrupt order. Evil Sword God said solemnly. I knew that day would come sooner or later. Zheng said gloomily. This emperor's time in this era is coming soon. Very soon, I'll be forcibly corrected and turn into a pile of dust. I've been waiting for someone to find me here, so that I can say my last words. Then do you have anything to say? In this era, people are flourishing, but the hearts of the people are not what they used to be. There are too many people hiding in the dark trying to show off. If it weren't for the fact that I wanted to survive, I would have already dug a hole to bury these shameless bastards and those Confucian scholars. Makes sense, Evil Sword God agreed. When Zheng said this, his body began to dissipate, as if it was about to break apart. By the time he finished his last sentence, the corrective power of order had already begun to descend, and was about to erase him. I can only be corrected, I can't be eliminated. Thus, the mastermind behind the scenes can't do anything to me. The person behind the scenes was an alien and not an earthling. Also, as soon as he finished speaking, Zheng's face finally revealed an expression of relief. The cola in this world is too delicious, Evil Sword God. The old devil. Chengyu. The disappearance of Qin Shi caused the three of them to fall into a short period of silence. However, thanks to the important information provided by Zheng, the basic identity of the suspect had been determined. Elsewhere, Audiobook received news that the old devil and the others were being interrogated, and the result was unexpected. I'm afraid that the governor's human identity is fake. In Songhai First Prison, Audiobook and Warden Liang were discussing an arrest plan. Fake. According to reliable intelligence, this governor, as well as the person behind him, aren't from Earth, Audiobook said solemnly. Perhaps they should have thought of this a long time ago. How could the culprit be a small cultivator in the gold core stage to be able to manipulate such a large number of Navy troops seamlessly? But this escalated the nature of the matter. This had originally been a very simple large-scale operation to wipe out the internet before the start of school, but no one had expected aliens to be involved. Earth was now establishing diplomatic relations with Divine Tao Star. At this critical juncture, both sides were striving for universal peace, and absolutely couldn't be disturbed by external forces. For the sake of establishing diplomatic relations, the heads of the United Nations had decided to work with Divine Tao Star's Star Lord to formulate the universe law to demonstrate their determination to safeguard universal peace. However, which force in the universe was behind all this? No one knew the situation. Audiobook lowered his head. He somehow felt that he had forgotten something about this whole matter. Last time, did the person who came to my house to break into the Void Gate get anything out of me? Audiobook suddenly thought of Kong Rui. It was the famous dark network thief Kong Rui, who had broken into the staff apartment on August 23rd in an attempt to plot against him. People had given him the nickname Thief Saint Bai Yutong. It was just that this Bai Yutong didn't know the sunflower acupuncture hand. Director Zhua, do you think this Kong Rui has something to do with this incident? Warden Liang asked. It's possible. Audiobook thought for a while before replying. He kept emphasizing that he didn't know who his employer was, and that the other party contacted him through a custom-made chat app. This style of doing things is a little similar to this governor's. Warden Liang. Then why did the other party collect Director Zhua's DNA? It can't be to do a DNA test. I have a hunch that this governor might have been ordered by someone to look for something, Audiobook analyzed. The other party controls a huge amount of information on the internet, so it shouldn't be difficult for them to infiltrate our official database. I'm afraid the purpose of collecting DNA is to compare the data. It seems that the conspiracy behind this isn't small. Warden Liang vaguely felt that this matter seemed to have escalated. At first, they had attacked this governor. On one hand, it was to purify the internet environment. On the other hand, the The governor had used the Water Army group to spread rumors, collect fees for deleting posts, send fraudulent text messages, and continue to go offline. This operation, which was very much like a pyramid scheme, had already amounted to a massive economic crime. But now, it seemed that this governor was also charged with endangering national security and stealing information on state public officials. Given the combined punishment for these crimes, his fate might be even more tragic than that of the old devil and the others. In Director Zhuo's opinion, what should we do now? Warden Liang asked. Have the Mahjong squad continue interrogating the group leaders and ask them if the governor collected anything from them. For example, hair, teeth, blood, anything that can be tested for DNA. Zhuo stroked his mustache as he pondered. Somehow, he felt that he was still missing some details. Should he call his cute little Shifu and ask? Chapter 943. Zhuo felt that there was already no way he could solve the conspiracy behind this matter with his current means and ability. A while ago, his cute little Shifu Wang Ling had given him a new set of equipment, but this equipment was for dealing with Earth cultivators. Right now, the enemy they were facing was aliens, and not every alien was as friendly as Changjiang 7. Seeing Zhuo staring at his phone in deep thought, Warden Liang couldn't help feeling a little envious. Is Director Zhuo going to call the old secretary again? Zhuo was blank for a moment before replying. Yes, in the eyes of the outside world, Zhuo's Shifu was actually Secretary Sun Dakong, but the truth was that Secretary Sun was just Zhuo's old leader, and they didn't have a master-disciple relationship. Ever since Zhuo had taken over the position in the general administration of 100 schools, the criticism in the outside world hadn't stopped. There was jealousy from his peers, as well as online water armies. A while ago, Zhuo had been worried about this matter, but now he felt at ease. In any case, when he was in a bad mood, he had a reason to tease his Shifu. Zhuo waited for a while. The phone beeped loudly, but no one picked up. He then sent a text message instead, but after waiting for a long time, there was no reply. Was Shifu busy? Zhuo knew all too well that if he didn't respond to a call or text, it meant that Shifu was busy at the moment and didn't even have time to peek. Relatively speaking, doing homework was more important than peeking, and studying strategies to keep grades down was more important than doing homework. And eating crispy noodle snacks was even more important than doing homework. There was still more than a month to go before school started. Given his Shifu's personality, it was unlikely that he would review so early. Cramming before exams was the way to get high marks. In summary, there was probably only one reason why Shifu wasn't picking up his call now. Thinking this, Zhuo directly put down his phone and didn't want to bother him anymore. What's the matter? Warden Liang asked curiously when he saw the change in Zhuo's expression. It's nothing, the old secretary is busy, and it's an important matter, so it's not convenient to disturb him, Zhuo said. Important matter? Warden Liang guessed, and he couldn't help having a strange expression on his face. The old secretary has found a partner? Did Secretary Sun succeed? As everyone knew, the 10 generals were almost all single at the moment. After all, when a person reached that realm, the needs of lust were almost completely indifferent. However, in order to continue the 10 generals' excellent genes and benefit future generations, the head of state had been busy arranging matchmaking for the 10 generals, and this matter was very clear to almost all important agencies. If a department received a good girl, they could report it directly to the head of state through the internal line. Now that Zhuo had suddenly mentioned something big, Warden Liang's imagination immediately started to run wild. Wasn't the important matter of the 10 generals just a blind date? Zhuo. No, it's much bigger than that. In the whole wide world, there was nothing bigger than Wang Ling eating crispy noodle snacks. Unfortunately, Warden Liang misunderstood and wasn't on the same wavelength at all. His eyes were filled with shock. Old secretary, you have a child? F***CK. Could it be that the old secretary is pregnant? Pregnant? Of course, she couldn't get pregnant. In this world, only tyrannical Song could get pregnant and make others pregnant as well. Elsewhere, in Group Leader Detention Island's independent space, Evil Sword God's interrogation was still going on. There wasn't much intelligence that could be sorted out now. Most of the people here had similar experiences and encounters, so they could only ferret out the person behind the scenes through some small details. Just as they were at their wits' end, someone in the crowd suddenly raised his hand. "Greetings, Governor. You've seen him before?" Evil Sword God used sword chi to pull this person in front of him. "I only saw a rough outline, but what I can be sure of is that the governor is human like us." "Is he human?" Evil Sword God didn't think that was likely. Since they had already confirmed that the other party was an alien and had some tricks up his sleeve, they couldn't rule out the possibility that the other party would use some special method to hide himself. Ever since Divine Tao Star and Earth had established diplomatic relations, a lot of information on aliens had been gradually transmitted to Earth using Divine Tao Star as a medium. This information was public. Aliens came in all shapes and sizes. There were all kinds of them, and some were especially human-like. For example, the data line aliens who had appeared on the convex planet. The other party would create a kind of power bank that was similar to a human, and then connect with it. They would look like humans, but in fact those human bodies were just their hosts. As advanced alien life forms, their racial advantage was that they could connect with all other living creatures and form a community of destiny. So generally speaking, the more you wanted to explain something, the more you had to cover it up. In the van, the old devil and evil sword god had the same opinion. Since the governor was so eager to disguise himself as a human, then there was a high chance that he was an alien creature that looked completely different from humans. If it was a general category, he could start to consider the xenomorph family. Alien family, the old devil was thinking. At the same time, the image on Detention Island was also transmitted to the governor's surveillance screen. He realized that he had underestimated the people who had infiltrated the closed space this time. This space was created by Lord Brain King. Unlike the orthodox space created using cultivation spells, this was a space built entirely on data. As long as the data wasn't damaged or shaken, the space would always exist. So even if this group of people found some clues, the governor had nothing to fear. It was impossible for orthodox cultivators to destroy this massive space built on data. Dimensional data and spells could be described as having nothing to do with each other. It was complete nonsense to use spells to destroy this place. The truth was that Evil Sword God had already tried to use sword chi to split open the space, but after that powerful sword chi seeped into the air, it was like a basin of water splashed on a huge sponge, and was instantly absorbed clean. There's something strange about this space. I can't get out. Evil Sword God frowned. He actually couldn't understand the structure of this space. Don't worry, I'll think of something. At the same time, the old devil was also having a headache. At that moment, the Mahjong team seemed to be in a predicament. In the end, the mechanical octopus codenamed Governor was amused. It looks like our brain star is still above the cultivators of Earth. It sneered. But at that moment, it saw a hand as white as jade suddenly appear in the air in front of it. Enemy attack? Everything happened so quickly that the mechanical octopus had no time to react. In the next moment, this hand suddenly grabbed at a corner. The governor turned pale with fright, as if he already knew what the other party was going to do. But it was already too late. Gotcha. The router in its base that emitted Wi-Fi signals was crushed to pieces. Chapter 944. This hand had caught the mechanical octopus off guard, and it hadn't been able to react in time. The router had been crushed, which directly cut off the network. Although this wouldn't destroy the data itself, it would cause great trouble for its work and control of Detention Island. Audacious lunatic. The mechanical octopus was furious. It stretched out its mechanical hand to swiftly wrap around Wang Ling's pure white hand. Just from the speed of its attack, Wang Ling could tell that this mechanical octopus's strength was roughly at the itinerant immortal level. It really wasn't enough. Wang Ling didn't show himself, and instead fought the mechanical octopus with just one hand through the space fissure. He knew that the Mahjong team was in trouble, and also that this was a problem that Audiobook was currently facing, so he decided to make a move. As for why he was only using one hand, it wasn't that Wang Ling was showing off how strong he was. It was because his other hand was pinching the crispy noodle snack, and he couldn't free his other hand. But in the eyes of this alien mechanical octopus, this was no different from a provocation. Hundreds of mechanical tentacles waved in the air, transforming into tens of thousands of images that were too much for the eye to take in. But Wang Ling couldn't be bothered to distinguish between what was real and what was fake. He just used the hand that had stretched out of the space fissure to grab at the air, and several of the real tentacles were already firmly grasped by him. Boom! Primordial chi exploded in his palm, and directly formed an explosion of air. In the blink of an eye, the intense heat caused the tentacles to explode and fall apart. True immortal. The mechanical octopus was astonished. It understood the current realms on Earth. The moment Wang Ling used his primordial chi, this powerful pressure almost immediately made it think of the true immortal realm. But the fact was that the mechanical octopus was ignorant and inexperienced. It didn't know how strong Wang Ling really was. What's more, it neglected that Wang Ling was now only fighting it with one hand. Even if he was only using one hand, the situation was already showing a crushing effect. After crushing a few tentacles, a lot of engine oil flowed out of the mechanical octopus. It had a mechanical body, so it did not feel any pain. However, it could clearly feel how troublesome the owner of the hand in front of it was. But the mechanical octopus was still confident in its ability to resist. It had a mechanical body and wasn't afraid of death at all. Furthermore, its entire body was made of memory metal, so it could automatically recover no matter how serious the damage was. In front of the memory metal, the heavy injury effect was nonsense. There was nothing it could do. This was the advantage of not having a body of flesh and blood. The mechanical octopus was very satisfied with the metal structure of its body. Cultivators consumed spiritual energy. If they fought a war of attrition, they would be exhausted to death sooner or later. Super 5G Network Online Repair Technique. The mechanical octopus gritted its teeth and activated this amazing ability. The Super 5G network was a super strong network that the brain race had stolen from the universe's top network technology provider, Huawei. The foundation of this technology came from Earth, and it didn't require a Wi-Fi signal. Its speed was also extremely fast. Back then, Lord Brain King had taken a fancy to this technology at first glance. However, the development of this technology had gone through many bumps. The most important thing was that some government officials did not know what was good for them and obstructed them in every way. Fortunately, the Earthling who developed this technology was very confident. When he encountered obstacles, he was not afraid and directly went up to challenge him. This repair technique relied on the Super 5G network that the brain race had modified. The moment it was activated, the damaged parts on the ground that had already been crushed to powder actually gathered and pieced together on their own. The moment the mechanical octopus activated this technique, it had already decided to fight a war of attrition. This was the same idea that President Bai had back then. But reality proved that the mechanical octopus had been thinking too much. All the battles Wang Ling had participated in had lasted no more than 5 minutes. Unless Wang Ling was deliberately playing. To be honest, apart from the Divine Dragons on Divine Dao Star the last time, this was Wang Ling's second time fighting an alien life form today. He knew what the mechanical octopus was thinking. He raised his hand, and a black ball of light swam out of his palm to form a pitch-black cube in the air. This was the space stripping technique, one of the 3,000 great spells, which could instantly form an independent space that was unaffected by any signal interference. The Super 5G network signal disappeared on the spot. An independent space? The mechanical octopus was stupefied. It knew too well what an independent space was. Group Leader Detention Island was also an independent space, but even Lord Brain King had expended a lot of energy to set it up back then. There was no way it could be formed in an instant. This person was shockingly strong. Was he really an Earthling? The mechanical octopus cursed in its heart. The owner of this hand was a little strange, and was clearly different from its normal understanding of Earth cultivators. Great Thousand Hands Guanyin Spell. In the next moment, a soul-stirring voice rang out in the mechanical octopus's mind, and it almost collapsed on the spot. Great Thousand Hands Guanyin Spell. The mechanical octopus was startled. He could even do this. The mechanical octopus had been created by Brain King, and its database contained information on almost the entire universe. The Great Thousand-Hand Guanyin Technique was one of the 30,000 Heavenly Dao super divine powers. It was a super skill among Heavenly Dao. It was enough to destroy the world. However, the owner of this hand clearly wasn't using his full strength. He had fused this technique with his fingers, and thousands of them formed a huge magic array in the air, just like the 10,000 Swords art sword array. These fingers rained down like a storm as they stabbed at the mechanical octopus's body and various large tentacles. Boom! After a series of explosions, the mechanical octopus's body was covered in cuts and bruises, and its tentacles were all blown off in the blink of an eye. Even its forehead was hit squarely, and it spat out pitch-black engine oil as it was sent flying. It crashed into the wall behind it, and then slid down the smooth wall. It's over, it's all over. The mechanical octopus felt despair. It had never thought that there would actually be such a variable on Earth. Its vision was blurry, and this Great Thousand Hands Guanyin spell had almost caused it to collapse completely. Lord Brain King. Lord Brain King, help! It sent out a weak distress signal, but this signal was also blocked by the independent space and couldn't be transmitted at all. Everything was already lost. Elsewhere in the bedroom, Wang Ling withdrew his hand from the crack. He had successfully intercepted this mechanical octopus's distress signal. Now, in order to lure out Lord Brain King, he just needed to be fully prepared and send out the distress signal. Then, he just had to wait for them to fall into his trap. Taking a bite of a crispy noodle snack, Wang Ling texted the distress signal to Audiobook. It was a string of Chinese characters. I have a book called Rongjai 6 Strokes. Chapter 945. I have a book called Rongjai 6 Strokes. It was very obvious that the distress signal sent by the mechanical octopus before it died was a code. After Audiobook received Wang Ling's text message, Wang Ming had already deciphered the code in less than a minute. So fast. This is a code in the independent game Invisible Guardian. I found it after a big data search. On the other end of the phone, Wang Ming replied. The correct answer to the code is, there are only 5 strokes in Rongjai 6 strokes. I see, as expected of teacher Wang Ming. Audiobook nodded. What are you going to do next? Wang Ming knew that Audiobook was the chief commander of this operation to clean up the net. The enemy they had to deal with this time was an alien from the Brain King clan on Brain King Star. Wang Ming had dismantled the mechanical core of the mechanical octopus, and only then had he found out where it had come from. According to the universe database shared by Divine Dao Star, Brain King Star's technology level was quite advanced, and it had almost entered the era of automation. Children born on Brain King Star had their brains harvested at birth and transplanted into their mechanical bodies, which greatly increased their lifespans. Brain King people didn't need to worry about falling ill at all. Even if their joints aged, any part of their body could be immediately replaced until they didn't want to live anymore. Brain King people who were determined to die would donate their brains to Brain King for free for him to absorb, and the whole process wouldn't be painful. Of course, only the Brain King people themselves knew whether it really was painless or not. This was just the universe intelligence shared by the Divine Dragon clan, and a lot of it was narrated by local residents of various planets. Some of it was true, and some was false, which they had to distinguish for themselves. Teacher Wang Ming, what do you think the purpose of the Brain King people coming to Earth this time? It looks like they're looking for someone. Audiobook was a little worried. Brain King, the leader of the Brain King clan, can absorb brains to increase his lifespan and wisdom. I'm afraid they're looking for people with extremely high IQs on Earth this time. People with extremely high IQs? Shouldn't they attack places like research institutes? Wouldn't that be very dangerous for teacher Wang Ming? Wang Ming nodded noncommittally. He imagined many scenarios, and after some calculation, he chose the most likely answer. They've gone to great lengths to develop a water army on Earth not only to earn money, but also because they want to use this massive water army network to find people, until they find the smartest people to offer to Brain King. However, there seemed to be a problem when this plan was first set up. Their direction of development was wrong. They set up a water army organization, and set up a group leader detention island. They probably wanted to find a wise person among the developing group leaders. It looks like these Brain King aliens are naive enough to believe that this group of all-mouthy kings are truly kings. Ajwa was utterly shocked when he heard this. Is there such a thing? One more thing, Teacher Wang Ming. Ajwa suddenly said at that moment. Speak. Previously, someone broke into my house. The thief's name is Kong Rui. He's a well-known repeat thief on the dark web. I heard about it. What did you find out? According to the current investigation, this Kong Rui was also sent by the governor. But at that time, he only wanted to take my hair. I'm afraid he wanted to use it for a DNA test, but unfortunately didn't succeed in the end. Ajwa's words left Wang Ming in a deadlock. Wait, Wang Ming said. He then sat down cross-legged and started the brain deduction technique again. Countless possibilities flashed through his mind as he began to deduce them. This process seemed to take a long time. In his mind, Wang Ming calculated all kinds of possibilities. It felt like a long day or two had passed, but in fact, it had only been a short 3 minutes. In these short 3 minutes, Wang Ming had calculated over 1,000 possible outcomes, and ranked them in descending order of probability. When the deduction was over, Wang Ming's head was drenched in sweat. He had used up too much energy. His brain had just been depleted when he deduced the Brain King clan's purpose for coming to Earth. Now that he was deducing it again, he actually felt like his brain was lacking oxygen. Teacher Wang Ming? On the other end of the phone, Ajwa was a little worried since he hadn't heard Wang Ming's voice for a long time. He's fine. It's just that he's a little hypoglycemic after the deduction. I'll call you back later. Jia-yin answered the phone on behalf of Wang Ming, and then hung up. How are you? She was right next to Wang Ming, so close that he could smell her fragrance. After giving Wang Ming the sugar pill that she had prepared, Jia-yin helped him into the bedroom at the base to lie down and rest. This was an essential item for Wang Ming every time he used the brain deduction technique. This technique consumed a lot of energy and caused damage to the brain, so the sugar pill's function was to replenish nutrients in time as well as to stop the damage in time. Last time, during the Shuego sect incident at number 60 high school, Wang Ming had used this technique to deal with several killers in a row and protect the students. At that time, he had directly passed out because he had used up too much energy. It was only after that incident that Wang Ming had truly begun to pay attention to the after effects of using the brain deduction technique. However, a mere sugar pill was only a temporary replacement, and couldn't sustain him for a long time. Every time the brain deduction technique was used, the energy consumption skyrocketed, and each time it was greater than the last. A mere sugar pill wouldn't be able to sustain him for long. Furthermore, the ingredients in the sugar pill were fast-acting, and long-term consumption would cause the body to develop a sugar resistance. Thus, he had to find a more perfect solution. Don't use your ability carelessly anymore. If you go on like this, Old Chi will get angry again, Jia-yin said worriedly. Don't tell Old Chi about this. I know. Wang Ming heaved a sigh of relief, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. He was well aware of what on earth he was doing. The after effects of the brain deduction technique couldn't be delayed. But there were too many things to deal with right now. They were at a critical juncture in establishing diplomatic relations with other planets, and the invasion of the Brain King clan had to be handled appropriately. The deduction this time had to be carried out. On the other hand, while the brain deduction technique had powerful after effects, it wasn't like it didn't have any benefits. Wang Ming felt that the results of each of his deductions were getting more and more. This was crucial for his study of Wang Ling's primordial qi. Ever since he had drawn up the talisman seal for himself as a child, it had been upgraded several times with his help. Wang Ming only had 2 unresolved problems before the next version could be upgraded. To solve these 2 problems, he had to increase his proficiency with the deduction technique, which would make the results more reliable. Version 3.0 of the talisman seal. He had to upgrade it before Wang Ling graduated from Senior 3. Chapter 946. The mechanical octopus, codenamed Governor, had been Brain King's right-hand man on Earth for many years. Its sudden death naturally attracted Brain King's attention. An unknown and mysterious almighty cultivator existed on Earth. This made Brain King shiver uncontrollably. This was a situation he had never imagined before. He thought he knew Earth very well, but in fact that wasn't the case. Naturally, he had never thought that the Brain King clan would provoke an old monster with a question mark. I made a mistake. The moment he sensed the mechanical octopus's death, Brain King's brainwaves almost immediately received a signal that life had disappeared, and he sighed. Brain King's entire body was made of light metal, and even his eyes were mechanical. Perhaps it was because he had learned of the mechanical octopus's death, but his unchanging mechanical eyes flickered with red light. Perhaps he should have noticed the strangeness on Earth earlier. The divine draconians had been expanding the universe since a long time ago. They were domineering, enslaving countless aliens and devouring their mother planets for their own. Just a while ago, the divine draconians made a plan to devour Earth. In the end, not only was Earth safe and sound, but the divine dragon's attitude changed drastically. Not only did they liberate the enslaved aliens, return their home planets, and help them rebuild their homes, but they also wanted to establish diplomatic relations with Earth. Perhaps behind this terrifying plot that resembled a Sichuan opera face-changing, it was this mysterious big shot who had intervened in the dark. As one of the most intelligent life forms in the universe, Brain King felt that it was a little too late for him to realize this. Sitting upright in a leather chair, he rubbed the space between his eyebrows, feeling a bit of a headache. "Lord Brain King, are you okay?" asked the secret envoy of the Brain King clan next to him. "I'm fine." Brain King shook his head. "Go, get me a primordial black crystal skull made of better material. My skull hurts." "Yes, Lord Brain King." The secret envoy nodded. Brain King struggled fiercely in his heart. He knew that he had provoked a terrifying almighty, one that even the divine dragons didn't dare to provoke. Not only did they not dare to provoke him, but they also had to curry favor with him. But he couldn't stop his plan. At this point, Brain King felt that he could only go all out. This matter concerned the fate of the entire Brain King clan. Brain King Star's planet core had always been operating by absorbing the brainwaves it emitted. Its lifespan was coming to an end, and the aging trend on Brain King Star was too severe. The brainwaves provided by the planet's residents after they died could no longer maintain the planet's operations. Left with no choice, Brain King had to take the risk and devour the alien brain. Just a few years ago, he had detected a set of strong brainwave data, which was emitted from Earth. From that moment on, Brain King knew. On Earth, there were intelligent beings who surpassed Brain King planet. If he wanted to save the inhabitants of an entire planet, he had to find this wise man. Brain King was well aware that this move of his was now in the teeth of the storm, and it could be said to be extremely dangerous. But now he had no other choice. At this thought, Brain King looked up at the void and muttered, "That sage of Earth, I'm sorry. In order to save my people, I can only sacrifice you. No matter what price I have to pay, I will definitely find you." "Lord Brain King, the new skulls have been delivered," the secret emissary suddenly returned. "Yes, help me put it on." Also, Brain King got up. "I'm going to Earth. Brother Octopus is dead, and I don't have much time left, so I've decided to do it myself." On the other side, following the sudden death of the mechanical octopus, the prison Mahjong Trio's operation became smoother. Group Leader Detention Island was originally an independent space created by the Brain King clan using data, and couldn't be cracked through normal means. However, when the terminal router was destroyed and the network disconnected, Detention Island's loopholes immediately became apparent. Evil Sword God slashed out 3 times in a row and punched 3 big holes in Detention Island. All the group leaders who had been imprisoned on Detention Island without seeing the light of day were finally set free today. There had once been a director who made a movie called Django Rescued. Evil Sword God felt that this historic scene could totally be made into a movie called Fat Otaku Rescued. How wonderful was the taste of freedom! The moment these imprisoned group leaders were set free, it could be said that they were deeply moved and deeply experienced. They finally felt like they were going to throw up as they ate junk food, and repeated the task of farming equipment on Group Leader Detention Island. What used to be incomparably fun now almost gave them lingering fear at the sight of it. However, what came next was a new round of sentencing. At Songhai First Prison, Warden Liang sent dozens of prison cars to Crow County, which were parked all over the street. Crow County's internet cafe became an exit from group leader detention island. Handcuffed, these group leaders of the Water Army were let out in an orderly manner by the prison guards. A lot of them had complicated expressions on their faces, and some were even smiling. This definitely wasn't a sign that they were broken. Instead, it was a sense of relief that they had been set free. "Hey, food delivery guy, how long are these people going to be locked up for?" The old devil asked a prison guard little brother. "You've done a great service this time." The prison guard little brother replied with a smile, "Based on the crime of disrupting network security, they'll be sentenced to between 1 to 12 months. Some people who committed online fraud will be sentenced based on the amount of money they defrauded. Most people might be sentenced to 10 or even 20 years, but they won't be sentenced to death." He could be considered a veteran of Songhai First Prison, and was also part of the Special Punishment Unit. He often delivered food to the old devil and the others, and could be said to be very familiar with the prison trio. "I see." The trio nodded. "Also, can you not call me food delivery guy? I have a name, I'm Guazwaran," the prison guard little brother said helplessly. "Guazwaran, HM." The old devil had actually heard this little brother introduce himself before, and somehow felt that this person's name sounded a little familiar. Furthermore, looking at this person's face and facial features, he felt that this person was somehow related to someone he had come into contact with before, and might even be related by blood. But who on earth was it? The old devil couldn't quite remember. "Old Liang is very happy that this case has been solved. You can have an extra meal tonight. Tell me what you want," Guazwaran said. "Can we have some wine to drink?" The trio looked at each other with tacit understanding, and then the old devil came forward to ask, "What brand?" Guazwaran asked. "Anything is fine. Tonight is an exception." "Then a bottle of Drunken Moon Resident." "Which Drunken Moon?" "Drunken Mouth, moon as in moonlight." "Oh," Guazwaran nodded. "No problem." Drunken Moon Resident was an old brand of immortal brew. It was very famous, and naturally there were a lot of pirated versions. There were now many Drunken Moon Resident on the market, such as Drunken Moon, Sinful Moon and so on. So it was very important to know the name. Chapter 947. September 5th, the 23rd day of the summer vacation. There was still about a month to go before the end of the summer break, and every cultivation high school's return date was brought forward. That was to say, even though school started on October 7th, students had to hand in their homework and take a new round of entrance tests on October 1st. After half a year, Wang Ling still remembered the awkwardness he had felt when he had just entered number 60 high school. The new entrance test wouldn't affect the class allocation, and would only assess each student's overall ability after half a year of study. There were improvements, but there were also those who dropped the ball. The key was the extent of the improvement. And this was the new problem of suppressing his score that Wang Ling was now facing. This test was much more difficult to suppress, because he had to clearly know the learning situation of everyone in his class, then calculate the extent of their improvement, and finally decide how much he had improved. That was right. Even if it was the extent of his improvement, Wang Ling had to keep his marks down and maintain his ranking among the progressives in class. Wang Ling had never been a procrastinator when it came to summer homework. He wasn't like 99% of people who would choose to cram in a fast food restaurant in the last few days of the holiday. When it came to homework, Wang Ling preferred to do it in an orderly manner. Furthermore, he didn't need to do some copying himself. When it came to handwriting, he had already stored a database of all the fonts in the world in his brain, and it was fairly easy to use the great horse healing technique to imitate handwriting. Thus, even if he didn't practice writing, he didn't have to worry about his handwriting being ugly. Every time he handed in his homework, including for exams, Teacher Pen always felt that Wang Ling's handwriting looked as if it had been printed out. Each word was square and neat. My last summer vacation is to write a report. This was also the homework assigned by every homeroom teacher. It was something that must be completed, and it was also a bonus for graduation. He actually didn't care whether he got extra points or not, but points would be deducted if he didn't write the report. The topic of the report: my classmate. Requirements: after spending half a semester together, you must have gotten to know and understand your classmates. Please write an evaluation of at least 800 words for each of the 5 classmates you are most familiar with. Talk about how you got to know them, and how you got to know them. Don't make things up. The story must be true. You can complain, but don't use any insulting words. Wang Ling mentally searched through Teacher Pan's homework requirements, and unexpectedly felt a sense of melancholy that he hadn't felt in a long time. An essay of 800 words wasn't much, but it was a bit much to write 5 essays. The main point was that he couldn't let pen and eraser do this for him. These 2 gremlins wrote mechanically. Wang Ling remembered that when Pen had written an essay for him previously, the language teacher had commented at the bottom, "Why didn't you copy out the classic collection of good words and good sentences?" Therefore, that assignment, the language teacher gave a low grade. The drawback of mechanical writing is that what is written is devoid of emotion, and there are too many traces of selective copying of essays. This time, he wanted to write a true story. He felt that he needed to at least have a deeper understanding of these 5 people before he could start writing. And when it came to the 5 people who had the deepest relationship with him in class, Super Chun, Dopey Gua, Featherlin, Little Peanut, as well as Lotus Sun, whom the author actually didn't know but whom she still hadn't forgotten. Out of the 5 of them, he had put 4 of them on the be wary list at the beginning of the semester. In the blink of an eye, half a semester had passed. Time really flies by. Wang Ling couldn't help but murmur. After writing more than 900 chapters, only half a semester had passed. In fact, Wang Ling didn't know how many chapters this author would have to finish writing before he graduated from high school. No, perhaps he should ask, how many days would it take for him to finish writing? After all, this shameless and unprincipled author only updated 1 chapter a day. Every time he thought of this, Wang Ling couldn't help taking a deep breath. He calmed himself down, then opened his eyes. When the golden petals bloomed in his pupils, the power of the king's eye had already been completely released. A ray of light penetrated the void and opened up a piece of past history. He was searching through memories of Super Chin. In the blink of an eye, Wang Ling had already moved from his desk to a sea of stars. This was the memory space that the king's eye had penetrated, and at that moment, all around him were fragments of Super Chin's memories. He stretched out his hand and grasped a fragment in his palm. A memory that didn't belong to Wang Ling suddenly appeared in his mind. All kinds of memories and scenes appeared vividly on the paper like old photos. 4,383 years. Super Chun could already remember things when he was 3 years old. The Chun family ran a martial arts dojo, and Father Chun was the head of the dojo. One night in late December, the weather in Songhai City suddenly turned cold, and a biting cold wind drifted down with snowflakes. When Super Chun woke up, there was already a thick layer of snow outside. The sky had just brightened, and the outside world was covered in pure white. The faint light from the clouds shone on the snowflakes, and Super Chun opened his eyes a little uncomfortably. It was actually not even 6 o'clock. That night, Super Chun slept in his family's dojo. When he opened his eyes, he could already hear the sound of wooden dummies being struck outside. In the courtyard in front of the dojo, Father Chun had set up some martial arts training equipment. 3-year-old Super Chun didn't fully understand how on earth they worked, but he knew that if he wanted to become stronger, he had to deal with them every day. In the courtyard, Father Chun was bare-chested, revealing his firm muscles as he wrestled with the wooden dummies in the courtyard barefoot. He stretched out his fist, and then swiftly pulled it back. His movements were as swift and violent as a viper's, and Super Chun's eyes couldn't even catch the shadow of his fist. Father Chun had deliberately let Super Chun live in the dojo. For generations, the Chun family had cultivated ancient body techniques, and in this era of national cultivation, body techniques were still indispensable. But now more and more children would rather become spellcasters who cast fireballs from the back than be men who use their exquisite physical skills to charge and break through enemy lines. In Father Chen's view, a real man should charge forward, instead of hiding in the back and casting spells. Seeing that Super Chun had woken up, Father Chun knew that his time had come. He completely suppressed his aura and exhaled white air. The white air was as long as a flying dragon's breath, and it actually shot out over 10 meters away. Super Chen's little mouth dropped open in astonishment. Do you want to learn, child? Father Chen looked at Super Chen. Yes. Super Chen was already infected. Good boy. Father Chen rubbed Super Chen's round little head, picked him up from the inner room, and carried him to an old locust tree. Father Chen. Go on, child. Super Chen. Father Chen. If you want to practice martial arts, you have to rub trees first. From today onwards, use your hands to rub tree bark until the tree is bald. Super Chen. Wang Ling. Sogu reading URL. Chapter 948. When cultivating body techniques, the foundation was naturally extremely important. Father Chen had a special cultivation method for this, and that was to rub trees. By rubbing his palms against the rough bark, he could train the strength of his 2 forearms. During this process, he could maintain a horse stance, which would also help him pour the little spirit qi he breathed into his dantian, thus achieving a self-circulation of spirit qi in his body. He didn't need the help of any medicine. Given time, he would be able to advance from body refinement to qi condensation in just a few years. Although there were a lot of medicine on the market for cultivation aids before the golden core stage, and it wasn't like the Chen family couldn't afford them at all, children who took pills didn't have as strong a foundation as those who worked steadily and steadily. At the same realm, children who took pills clearly didn't have enough stamina in battle, and would feel tired after fighting for a while. This was in fact the reason why more and more people now chose to become mages. Body techniques consumed too much energy, and children who took pills would be defeated after a few punches. This had also created a vicious cycle in modern preschool education. It was unknown when, but in the eyes of some children, body techniques had already become outdated techniques. It was as if only those who could release fireballs and water bombs were the real cultivators. Dad, I can't take it anymore. In the first month of training, Super Chen felt like he was going to die. His palms often bled from the friction, and some of the blood dripped onto the snow on the ground, slowly melting it into steam. An old steed has great ambitions, and an old tree has deep roots. Do you know what it means? Dad, are you telling me to lay a good foundation? 3-year-old Super Chen didn't understand. No, it means that you're in trouble. You mustn't be afraid. Father Chen said loudly. You have to go rub him. Super Chen. Come on, follow my rhythm. Envoy, keep rubbing trees, rub him. Father Chen was excited. Super Chen rubbed his palms against the bark, and it hurt so much that he was about to cry. Father Chen gave instructions from the back. 1 2 3 4. 2 2 3 4. Keep working hard. One more time. Super Chen. Wang Ling. So that year, 3-year-old Super Chen rubbed trees day after day, and finally comprehended the profound meaning of the iron palm at the age of 4. It was clear that while Super Chen's childhood seemed boring, it had in fact been fruitful. Children in the cultivation world were enlightened at a relatively early age. Super Chen could already speak fluently at the age of 3, which proved that his aptitude wasn't bad. Father Chen clearly saw this point, which was why he had decided to help Super Chen establish his foundation early. In his sea of memories, Wang Ling reached out and plucked out a silver-gray memory fragment. This was a dark-colored fragment, which represented a heavy and unpleasant memory. It was not like most of the other fragments, which were colored like glass. Wang Ling pinched the fragment in his hand, then slowly closed his eyes. This time he decided to observe Super Chen's world from a closer distance. Thus, a 4-year-old girl named Wang Xiaoling appeared in Super Chen's memory world. This was a transformation phenomenon formed by combining the King's Eye and the Great Memory spell, which was used to conceal one's identity. In his memory, Super Chen could see Wang Ling as Wang Xiaoling actually existed. Wang Xiaoling had always been an important part of Super Chen's memories, but in order not to affect the order of the memory world, the King's Eye had transformed itself into this girl. This was a little like a first-person view of the plot, which allowed him to observe Super Chen up close. The silver-gray memory fragments represented huge changes and disasters in life. Wang Ling transformed into Wang Xiaoling, and observed the world with the false identity of a little girl. In an instant, he felt the scene in front of him grow bigger. In a child's world, everything seemed so lofty. When he came back to his senses, he found himself in a park, surrounded by several naughty children. Your mother is the woman who picks up trash nearby, right? Every day, you come to my house to collect the broken jars. They're smelly and dirty. Disgusting. The speaker was a fatty whom Wang Ling didn't recognize. But he knew this girl in Super Chen's memory. Now that he had transformed into this girl, he also shared her memories. The fatty who had spoken was called Tiger Liang, and he came from a very rich family. His father ran a magic dojo for children called Balance Dojo, which was a business rival of Super Chen's father. In this neighborhood, the only reputable dojos were Super Chen's Strength Super Body Techniques Dojo and Tiger Liang's Balance Magic Dojo. However, Tiger Liang's family's business had been booming over the years, and their reputation had almost eclipsed the Chen family's. Wang Ling didn't say anything, because the Wang Xiaoling he had transformed into was actually a mute. But he had the little girl's memories and could feel her fear. This made Wang Ling a little uncomfortable. Should he make a move? Wang Ling hesitated. He knew very well what kind of changes he would bring about if he made a move. Maybe the world line of this memory would change. He was silent in his heart, and decided to endure it for the time being and see how things developed. Besides, he really didn't need to lower himself to the level of a bunch of brats. Every single person had a silver-gray memory fragment in their life. This represented a great calamity that they had to endure. This calamity could only be overcome, and it could not be avoided. For example, when Wang Ling had been 6 years old, Loopy Toad had fallen from the sky and smashed his Crispy Noodle Snacks flagship store. That had been one of the catastrophes. Wang Ling knew that even if he forcibly changed the course here, Super Chen might run into even bigger trouble in the future. At that moment, a familiar voice suddenly rang out in his ear. It was Super Chen's voice. "Let go of that girl." Super Chen suddenly appeared in front of Wang Ling, his arms crossed. Wang Ling synchronized the girl's memories, and in that moment, he felt that Super Chen was a hero who had fallen from the sky. "Brother Tiger, this is Super Chen from the Chen family. He doesn't look easy to deal with." "That's right, Super Chen has been cultivating body skills since he was 3, and I heard he's made some progress." Tiger Liang had 2 lackeys by his side. They were both student members of the Balance Magic Center, and they followed Tiger Liang's lead. Similarly, as Tiger Liang's lackeys, they also enjoyed discounts on their courses, with one person getting a 40% discount. Magic Dojo's enrollment was unprecedented, and parents would deliberately get close to Tiger Liang to save money. Thus, the number of lackeys around Tiger Liang would only increase. "Super Chen? You're from that Strength Super Dojo, right? Body skills?" Tiger Liang smiled. He opened his palm and released a fireball. "Let's see if your body skills are fierce or if my fireball is more powerful." Taking a deep breath, Super Chen walked up to Tiger Liang and stared at him. "If you don't leave now, you might be crippled with this palm of mine." "Ah, you think you know Buddha's palm? You're only 4, how can you fight me? An idiot. A mute." Tiger Liang laughed. Bang. Without another word, Super Chen's palm struck Tiger Liang's leg so fast that Tiger Liang couldn't follow it at all. "I don't know Buddha's palm, but I can still use the iron sand palm." Super Chen withdrew his technique. "Ah." Tiger Liang cried out in pain and hurriedly grabbed his leg. But Tiger Liang forgot to withdraw his fireball. And just like that, it exploded on his leg. That year, Super Chen had made a move for the first time. He had used his body skills to save a girl. He had been 4 years old. Love Shang mobile reading address. Chapter 949. In the hospital, Tiger Liang, who had been injured by the fireball spell, was wailing bitterly. It was hard to believe that a 10-year-old child would actually be bullied by 2 4-year-old kids. "It's him. And her. The 2 of them teamed up to bully me." It was supposed to be a one-on-one duel, but in the end, this Chen guy didn't play by the rules and attacked in the middle of the duel. "I was hit by the fireball spell. Father, you have to believe me, it's not my fault. It's all their fault. The world's fault." His lackeys nodded repeatedly and echoed him on the side. Right, it's just like Brother Tiger said, they're bullying people. They're shameless. Super Chin didn't defend himself from beginning to end. He knew that the surveillance footage around the park was damaged, so it would be useless no matter what he said. Tiger Liang could twist the truth and say anything. Wang Xiaoling was mute and couldn't speak. She didn't even know a few words. Tiger Liang was the one who complained first, and Wang Xiaoling shook her head repeatedly, unable to argue back. Wang Ling, who was in the girl's body, could very clearly feel her helplessness. Don't be afraid. Super Chen shielded Wang Xiaoling behind him, as if she wasn't an outsider but his own little sister. Father Chen had taught him that people who cultivated body techniques had to know how to persevere. Just like that old locust tree in front of the dojo whose bark had already been peeled off. Even without its skin, it would naturally still stand firm, and would never fall no matter what the seasons changed. Tiger Liang's father had already arrived. Seeing his son's pained expression, his gaze on Super Chen gradually turned cold, and he snorted coldly. You uncultured little bastard, if your father doesn't teach you, I'll teach you in his place. He punched at Super Chen. Tiger Liang's father, Liang Heng, was at the foundation establishment stage. This punch was so fast that Super Chen could only catch the shadow of it. He wasn't a cultivator who focused on body techniques, so his fist moved a little slower. Super Chen felt that he really couldn't compare to his father. Super Chen felt that he could completely dodge this punch by predicting where the shadow fist would attack. He gritted his teeth and revealed an unyielding gaze that was unique to him. The resoluteness in his gaze seemed to touch a chord in Liang Heng's heart. This was the expression of a man. This was the fearless backbone of a child who had practiced physical arts for a year. To tell the truth, Liang Heng was a little envious. He knew that his Tiger Liang was already a far cry from Super Chen's mental state. In that instant, Liang Heng felt angry in his heart. Facing Super Chen's gaze, he found that for a moment he couldn't bring himself to make a move. Thus, he swung his fist at Wang Ling on the side. Super Chen wasn't afraid of him, since he would get into trouble if he hit him. But this little girl was different. Her mother was just a garbage collector, and this girl was mute. Even if he bullied her, what could he do? Liang Heng was emboldened. He instantly changed his target and attacked Wang Xiaoling. Super Chen wanted to stop him, but it was already too late. Bang! Instead of hitting Wang Ling, the punch hit a figure that had quickly appeared. It was a stalwart man with a broad back. Father! Super Chen was on the verge of tears. His eyes were full of grievance, but they never fell. Son, straighten your back. Don't be afraid. You want to ask why? Because I'm here. Super Chen. Wang Ling. Father Chen gripped Liang Heng's fist firmly. Old Liang, isn't hitting a little girl a little too petty? Seeing that his punch had failed, Liang Heng shrugged. The wicked will be punished by the wicked. You bullied my son, but don't think this matter will be forgotten. Actually, you know the truth very well. Children are young, and quarrels are inevitable. If you indulge them, you'll only harm your little tiger. Father Chen laughed. That's all I have to say. I've already paid the medical fees. Old Liang, I hope you'll follow the rules and stop making trouble for my son and this poor little girl for the sake of the fact that we're from the same school at university. Father Chen sighed in his heart. Be that as it may, the enmity between their martial arts dojo and the Liang family's magic dojo had been thoroughly established. Father Chen couldn't be any clearer about Liang Heng. He had been competitive ever since he was in university. Now that his 10-year-old son Tiger Liang had been beaten up and injured by 4-year-old Super Chen, it was the same as smashing the reputation of his family's magic dojo in his own hands. Son, let's go. Father Chen shielded Super Chen and Wang Xiaoling and prepared to leave. In the hospital bed, Tiger Liang suddenly yelled, Father! You can't let them go. Shut up. Liang Heng glared at Tiger Liang, and Tiger Liang was so frightened that he instantly stopped talking. He knew that what he had done was indeed too humiliating. Father, it's 2 against 1. Shut up. Liang Heng was so angry that he didn't know what to do. What F*** king 2 against 1? You, a 10-year-old, can't handle 2 4-year-old children? How embarrassing is that? The most embarrassing thing was that a lot of people in the hospital who had nothing to do with Tiger Liang's yelling made fun of him. Liang Heng could be considered a celebrity in this area, and a celebrity's joke was always funnier. But Tiger Liang didn't realize this at all. He felt especially aggrieved. He had been spoiled since he was young. When had he ever suffered like this? It was all that damn garbage collector's fault. I'll remember this. Just you wait. Tiger Liang shouted at the backs of the Chen father and son, as well as Wang Xiaoling. At that moment, Father Chen stopped and turned his head to size up Tiger Liang, who was wrapped around his legs like a dumpling. What are you looking at? Tiger Liang was a little scared. Father Chen laughed. It's nothing. Uncle Chen suddenly thought I should show some concern for you. Tiger Liang. Concern for me? Then have Super Chen bow and apologize to me. No. He's the younger brother. He has to kowtow and apologize. You misunderstand. Father Chen shook his head. Uncle Chen wants to ask you if you've finished your winter holiday homework. Tiger Liang. Father Chen. How many marks did you get for the final exam? Tiger Liang. Father Chen. What's your ranking in class? What's your ranking in the grade? Did I ask you, how many which friends does Sun Wukong have? Tiger Liang. Father Chen. You're in grade 3, and you'll be in grade 1 in 2 years. How's your cultivation progress? What level are you at now? Is there any hope for you to reach the Qi refinement stage in grade 6? Tiger Liang. Father Chen's question seemed simple, but each one hit the nail on the head, and Tiger Liang, who was lying in bed, was instantly rendered speechless. Like an idiot, Tiger Liang opened his mouth and couldn't say a word for a long time. Fine. Pack up. Home. Father Chen was in a great mood, and he left with Super Chen and Wang Xiaoling. The 2 4-year-old children were utterly shaken by Father Chen's operation. And it was also on that day that the 4-year-old Super Chen suddenly understood something. It turned out that sometimes you didn't even need to use your hands to hurt someone deeply. The seed of verbal cannon started to sprout in Super Chen's young heart. Chapter 950. Ever since Father Chen's tiger-like verbal attack on Tiger Liang in the hospital, 4-year-old Super Chen seemed to have comprehended something related to the art of language. So the next day, Super Chen didn't continue to stare at the half-bald old locust tree, but sat under the locust tree with a copy of the Encyclopedia of Mutual Existence in his hands. Father Chen thought that Super Chen had probably been traumatized by what had happened yesterday, and hadn't come back to his senses yet. Sitting under the locust tree and reading from a distance looked like he was suffering from autism. He wasn't in a hurry to urge Super Chen to cultivate, but sat down next to him and carefully counseled him. Son, cultivate body techniques and cultivate your mind and character. I'm very pleased that you stepped forward bravely yesterday to save that poor mute girl. To be honest, Super Chen had made a lot of progress. As a father, Chenyi indeed felt a sense of joy from the bottom of his heart. Nowadays, it took courage to help an old lady who had fallen down, let alone to face several children who were 5 or 6 years older than you. Father Chen felt that Super Chen had 100% inherited his genes in his bones. He was a little headstrong, a little hot-blooded, and had a fearless personality, which was even more so than Father Chen himself. In Father Chen's opinion, Super Chen was even braver at 4 years old than when he was 4. So Father Chen didn't blame Super Chen at all for hitting Tiger Liang yesterday, and instead took it upon himself. The Liang family's father and son were as clear as a mirror on what was right and wrong. Yesterday, Father Chen had paid the medical fees on the spot, and Liang Heng couldn't find fault with him at all. Instead, it was his disappointing son who refused to give up in the hospital, which made a lot of people laugh at him. But who knew what had gone wrong? And Super Chen seemed a little autistic today. Father Chen organized his words and wanted to clarify. Son, you didn't do anything wrong yesterday, so... I know. Holding the Encyclopedia of Mutual Existence in his hands, Super Chen replied, Dad, I'm now pursuing the art of language. Language, the art of language? A gentleman uses his mouth, not his fists. Dad, you left Tiger Liang speechless yesterday. You were so cool. So I think that apart from cultivating my body and limbs, I should also cultivate my mouth, Super Chen replied excitedly. For a moment, Father Chen was speechless. As it turned out, something had gone wrong in the last segment yesterday. At the time, he really couldn't stand the sight of Tiger Liang's unrelenting and vile attitude, which was why he had spoken up. It was actually very easy to teach this kind of brat a lesson. Just the few questions he had asked yesterday were enough to hit the nail on the head for an ignorant and incompetent second-generation rich kid like Tiger Liang. Father Chen never thought that he would inadvertently inspire his son's fascination with pursuing the art of language. He couldn't help but laugh. Then what art of language did you discover in this complete collection of crosstalk? 4-year-old Super Chen thought for a bit, then answered seriously, smoke. Father Chen. Super Chen, drink. Father Chen. Super Chen. And a perm. Father Chen. But you're a kid. Minors aren't allowed to smoke or drink. This is our family rule. Super Chen. But isn't it still scalded? You're right, son. Father Chen smiled slightly. And so, when Super Chen was 4 years old, in order to stop his son from pursuing the art of language excessively and concentrate on cultivating body techniques, Father Chen tricked Super Chen into going to the barber shop and gave the barber a common code word for haircuts. Just cut my son's hair a little shorter. That year, Super Chen was 4 years old. That year, Super Chen's hairstyle became a crew cut. Moreover, this crew cut had lasted until today. After the friction with the Liang family, the business of the Chen family's strength super martial arts dojo suddenly improved. In this new month, the martial arts dojo had recruited nearly 20 more disciples. Many of them were preschool students, and weren't much older than Super Chen. There were 2 reasons for this. First, the Liang family's Balance Magic Dojo had always been the signature dojo in this area. But the son of the dojo's director, Tiger Liang, a 10-year-old child, had lost to 4-year-old Super Chen, and word of this had spread from the hospital. So that day, everyone marveled at the power of the iron sand palm. No one had thought that a 4-year-old child would be able to turn Tiger Liang into a mummy with one palm strike. Of course, there was naturally some exaggeration in this matter. After all, no one had personally experienced it. The first person to spread the news was just relying on hearsay, combined with Tiger Liang's pitiful and tragic picture. And looking at the picture, they could speak for themselves. Second, the fight between Super Chen and Tiger Liang had directly helped Strength Super Martial Arts Dojo become famous. The Body Techniques Dojo that Father Chen ran originally had a pretty good reputation, but since the rise of magic, the number of apprentices in the dojo had slowly dwindled. And now, this fight had forcibly increased the dojo's traffic. Plus, people were animals that liked to follow the trend. When parents felt that other people's children were more outstanding, their first reaction definitely wasn't whether there was something wrong with their own children's learning ability, but that it was definitely the way they were making up for it. Time for Super Chen and Tiger Liang. After the matter with Tiger Liang, some parents immediately signed up for Father Chen's Body Techniques Dojo. However, more and more people signed up, and a lot of them had refunded their tuition fees from Balance Dojo to sign up here. Father Chen could almost imagine Liang Heng's angry and stifled expression. In short, this matter had its pros and cons for Father Chen. The pro was that their family's business had improved, and they no longer had to kneel on a washboard when they went home at night because of poor business. But the con was also very obvious. His senior brother Liang Heng had liked to compete with him from the very beginning. Back then, a female university teacher had kissed him because of Truth or Dare, and his senior brother had thought that she was his girlfriend. The next month he had conquered her, and then performed a French kiss in front of him on Valentine's Day. Now that Father Chen had inadvertently stolen Balance Dojo's business, who knew what this unlucky senior brother would do to deal with him? Father Chen didn't care. He looked at Super Chen in the courtyard and couldn't help feeling a little worried. While he was thinking, a pair of familiar figures appeared at the entrance of their courtyard. Wang Xiaoling and her mother appeared at the entrance of the Chen family training hall. The mother-daughter pair leaned against each other as they stood under the signboard that read Strength Super Training Hall. Their eyes were filled with gratitude and some timidity. "I'm here to see the dojo master," Wang Xiaoling's mother said in a trembling voice. Chapter 951. It was Wang Xiaoling's mother. Father Chen could tell at a glance that the woman was very dirty, but she seemed to have great courage as she stood timidly at the entrance of the dojo with her daughter. She didn't even dare raise her head, and only looked around at everything in the dojo out of the corner of her eye. Her shoes were already very old, but the woman had clearly washed them again for the sake of coming to the dojo, but they were still covered in dust. "Come in." Father Chen smiled. He had met Wang Xiaoling's mother before, and felt that she wasn't an easy woman. The Chen family would store up the old things and cans at home, and put them in a fixed place for Wang Xiaoling's mother to recycle. Of course, there was no charge. Father Chen and Mother Chen were very warm-hearted people, and knew how difficult it was for a mother to raise a mute girl. Standing here now and feeling the girl's synchronized memories, Wang Ling was deeply moved. In Wang Xiaoling's heart, she was very grateful. Although Wang Xiaoling was very young, Super Chen had saved her. Wang Xiaoling didn't know what it was like to like someone, but she was now standing at the entrance of the dojo. Like her mother, she had mustered up the courage to come here. The moment he saw Super Chen, Wang Ling could clearly feel his face unconsciously start to burn hot. This feeling of being the first person in the story was really a little strange to Wang Ling. But looking at the development of the story, it was very clear that this Wang Xiaoling was an important part of Super Chen's childhood. Every time he thought of this, Wang Ling couldn't help feeling conflicted. The memory fragment he had grabbed earlier about Wang Xiaoling was gray. This indicated that the story about Wang Xiaoling wasn't going to end well. Thus, Wang Ling was very curious about how the story would develop. Although Father Chen had already invited her, Xiaoling's mom stood outside the dojo and didn't dare come in. The dojo was too clean, and she was afraid that she would dirty it. After careful consideration, she decided not to go in. Standing at the entrance, she bowed to Father Chen with Wang Xiaoling. Thank you, Teacher Chen. Teacher Chen, please accept these." The woman clutched the bag in her hand, looking a little nervous. Inside were the spirit fruits they had just bought. Actually, these spirit fruits weren't worth much to most people. But Father Chen knew Xiaoling's family situation, and this was already the best Xiaoling's mom could come up with. The right and wrong in this matter will be decided by the public. Xiaoling's mom, you don't need to be so polite. I'll take these fruits. Father Chen accepted the bag of spirit fruits. But the truth wasn't that he coveted the sweetness of the fruits, but he didn't want them. But he didn't want Xiaoling's mom. He just wanted Xiaoling's mom's. Of Xiaoling's heart. Chen's mom. Xiaoling's mom, Chen's mom is. It was almost evening, and almost all the kids in the dojo had left. Only Super Chen, Xiaoling, and Xiaoling were left. Seeing that Xiaoling's mom couldn't make up her mind, Super Chen simply stepped forward and pulled Xiaoling away. The two of them ran to the back of the dojo, where some of Super Chen's toys were kept. Xiaoling's mom felt a little embarrassed at this enthusiasm, but when she saw her daughter actually smile the moment Super Chen pulled her away, she was stunned for a moment. She hesitated at the entrance, then finally took off her shoes and stepped barefoot on the cold wooden floor of the Taoist temple. The two of them sat down on the yoga mat, and Father Chen got straight to the point. "Xiaoling's mom, there's something I need your help with." "Me? Help?" Xiaoling's mom thought she had heard wrong, and didn't dare believe it. She was just a trash collector. How could she help? "It's like this. My Super Chen is going to be 5 soon, which is the right age to learn swordsmanship. I'm going to teach him swordsmanship. His foundation in swordsmanship is 0. Generally speaking, the best way to practice swordsmanship is to find someone of the same age to practice with. That's the best way to do it." Xiaoling can't speak, but I can see that she's a smart girl. She plays well with our Super Chen, and she's the right age. On the side, Wang Ling was playing with Super Chen inside Wang Xiaoling's body. These were all memory fragments. When Wang Ling didn't want to move, his body would move on its own to reproduce the plot in his memory. So while he played with Super Chen, he was also eavesdropping on Father Chen and the others. He somehow felt that Father Chen was going on a blind date when he said this. Unfortunately, Father Chen wasn't Father Wang, nor was he a scholar. He had already tried very hard to weave his words so that his request didn't sound like a blind date. But it was clear that he had failed. Forget about a foundation in swordsmanship. Our Xiaoling doesn't even have a foundation in anything else. Xiaoling's mom was a little worried. You don't have to worry about that. I just need to find a sparring partner for our Super Chen, Father Chen said. Our body techniques dojo also has swordsmanship classes, and I have a wise saying, sword and body are inseparable, and both styles blossom. Xiaoling's mom. Wang Ling was stunned. What freaking blossom? Of course, Xiaoling won't be a sparring partner for nothing. After that, you and your daughter can live in the dormitory behind the dojo, just like some of the boarding kids in our dojo. Then every month I'll pay Xiaoling some training fees. Xiaoling can also take this opportunity to learn some self-defense techniques, so that she won't be bullied by brats like Tiger Liang again. Father Chen spoke tirelessly and sincerely. What do you think, Xiaoling's mom? Xiaoling's mom was deeply moved by these words. She was well aware that Chen Yi was helping her and her daughter. At that moment, Xiaoling's mom's heart trembled with gratitude, fear, and more than anything, fear and trepidation. Her eyes were fixed on Xiaoling, who was playing with Super Chen a short distance away. It had been a long time since Xiaoling had that kind of smile on her face. They were pitiful mother and daughter, who had survived domestic violence. Since Xiaoling's father's death, there had been no more domestic violence in their lives, but Xiaoling could no longer speak. Then let Xiaoling stay. Xiaoling's mom lowered her head. In the end, she was too embarrassed to stay and cause trouble for Father Chen. I still have some recycling business over there. If I move here, they won't be able to find me. No problem, Xiaoling's mom. Don't worry, leave Xiaoling to me. I'll still leave a double room for you and Xiaoling in the dormitory behind. If you want to see Xiaoling and keep her company, you can come over anytime. Father Chen nodded. He knew that this was the only way things could go for now. Chapter 952. The sword and the body were inseparable, and the style blossomed in both. Although Father Chen had made this up, he hadn't said it casually. It had to be known that a play wasn't nonsense, and an adaptation wasn't a fabrication. In high school, the study of swordsmanship and body techniques was included in PE class under the guidance of a PE teacher. At the university level, the classification would be more detailed. Before high school, the Alliance of 10,000 Schools had a general study program that required students to master the use of one basic weapon. And that weapon was the sword. 10,000 swords were inseparable, and learning swordsmanship would also benefit from using other weapons. Before university, the swordsmanship exam had always been a very important part of the exam. In contrast, after university, there were many different types of weapons that could be learned. Apart from students who chose to study swordsmanship was no longer a compulsory course. Swordsmanship exams started in the second grade of primary school. Super Chen was only 4 years old, but he still had to master the necessary basics. Wang Ling could imagine how strict Father Chen's training was, especially for children born into an ancient martial arts family. After all, not everyone in this world was like him, who was born knowing everything. Wang Ling hadn't studied swordsmanship, and didn't have any foundation in it, but he knew the most profound of sword Dao divine abilities. The advantage of this was that he didn't need to use his sword at all in a fight, and it was almost completely automatic. Thus, he wasn't very willing to use his sword every time he fought, because it gave him no fighting experience at all. Once he used his sword, it was just like a pain in the ass in domestic mobile games. In contrast, slapping was more satisfying. That night, at Father Chen's kind invitation, Xiaoling's mom stayed at the dojo for dinner, then went to her shabby little rental house that very night to sort out Xiaoling's clothes and bring them over. These were all old clothes, some of which were gifts. Xiaoling's mom said that there were also diapers that Xiaolongnu had used, but Father Chen didn't know if that was true or not. Holding these clothes, Father Chen was a little moved. Xiaoling's mom was pretty popular in the neighborhood. Apart from those unreasonable people in the Liang family, basically no one made things difficult for her and her mother. I'll take good care of her. If Xiaoling's mom misses Xiaoling, you can come over anytime. Father Chen smiled. Xiaoling's mom felt her nose sting, and her heart was moved. There were a lot of things she wanted to say, but she couldn't bring herself to say them. Father Chen bowed deeply. Thank you for taking care of me. Xiaoling's mother was most worried about Xiaoling not having anyone to look after her at home. They were in financial difficulties and couldn't afford to go to school or kindergarten. Xiaoling was about to reach the age of primary school. Father Chen's help had in fact solved the mother and daughter's desperate situation. Of course, Father Chen wasn't a good person. He did pity Xiaoling and her mother, but part of the truth was that Xiaoling's roots were indeed pretty good. Father Chen had noticed this on his way back from the hospital. Although Father Chen's realm wasn't high and was only at the foundation establishment stage, he was still a foundation establishment cultivator. However, he had been the owner of the body technique dojo for many years after all. He could see Xiaoling's talent just by looking at her. But as Xiaoling's mom had said, Xiaoling hadn't had any formal training before, so she would definitely be at a disadvantage in a real fight with Super Chen. But Father Chen already had a plan for this problem. The next day, Father Chen prepared two 20-kilogram sports bracelets for Super Chen to carry more weight. The bracelets looked very small, but were in fact very heavy. Super Chen wasn't prepared when he took them, and his center of gravity shifted forward, almost causing him to fall forward. "Dad, what's this?" Super Chen asked. "Weight-bearing bracelets made of a high-density material. They look light, but they're actually very heavy. After that, you can wear them when you train with Xiaoling. It'll be fairer," Father Chen said. "Do I really have to fight her?" Super Chen was a little embarrassed. "Do you think your dad is the Virgin Mary or a living bodhisattva? As I said yesterday, Xiaoling's roots are pretty good. Both of you have zero foundation in swordsmanship, so she's perfect as your opponent." After saying that, Father Chen gave Xiaoling and Super Chen one plastic sword each. Wang Ling knew that these were swords specially used for training, and were especially for sword Dao novices. When they came into contact with a human body during a spar, the blades would immediately become as soft as jelly, and there was no need to worry about hurting the other party. But these kinds of training swords weren't cheap. When Wang Ling had checked Father Chen's dojo storeroom before, it had only been filled with wooden swords. These two training swords looked very new, and Father Chen had probably just bought them. Wang Ling felt that Father Chen lived up to his name. He was loyal to his friends, kept his promises, and knew how to conduct himself. Although Wang Xiaoling's life had been miserable, it was good fortune for her to have met Father Chen. In some ways, Wang Ling deeply felt that Super Chen had definitely inherited Father Chen's personality. There was no need to do a paternity test for this pair of father and son. They were 100% biological. But what Wang Ling was particularly curious about was how on earth Super Chen had gotten his blessed mouth attribute. In the dojo, Father Chen had Super Chen and Wang Xiaoling stand opposite each other, and they first greeted and bowed to each other. Father Chen then started to give pointers on the side, a wooden sword in his hand. Swordsmanship and body techniques are both the same and different. They both rely on strength and skill, but body techniques focus on strength, while swordsmanship focuses on skill. Super Chen and Xiaoling looked at each other with half-understanding expressions on their faces. Super Chen wasn't wearing a bracelet at the moment. Standing on the spot, Father Chen looked at Super Chen. "Come, Super Chen. Attack me with all your might." He deliberately didn't directly call Super Chen son, partly to show his seriousness, and partly to take Xiaoling's feelings into consideration. It had to be said that Father Chen was really a big, warm man. "Aya!" Super Chen gritted his teeth, raised the sword in his hand high and slashed down at Father Chen. Wang Ling was startled by this sudden shout, but it had to be said that this was indeed Super Chen's hot-blooded personality. Father Chen stood still on the spot as he casually parried with the wooden sword. Then with a bang, Super Chen's training sword was directly sent flying by Father Chen's swimming dragon raising its head. "Look at the scale on your sword," Father Chen said. Super Chen checked it. There was a scale on the hilt of the training sword, which showed roughly how much strength had been used in the blow just now. Super Chen's scale read 10 kilograms. Of course, this wasn't Super Chen's full strength. Super Chen, Xiaoling, look at mine. Father Chen handed them the wooden sword, which was also equipped with a scale. The blow that had sent Super Chen flying just now had actually only used 50 g, which was about the weight of an egg. Super Chen was a little incredulous. "This? It's not enough to learn to use a sword just by using brute force, Father Chen said with a smile. At that moment, Super Chen and Xiaoling nodded heavily. Of course, this wasn't Wang Ling's intention. Although he was in Xiaoling's body, if he didn't want to move, Xiaoling's body would move on its own based on Super Chen's memory. Right now, it was as if he was experiencing a first-person game with a movie plot. For Wang Ling, this could be considered a pretty good experience during the boring summer vacation. Come Xiaoling, it's your turn. Come and experience the wonders of skill. At that moment, Father Chen suddenly turned his head and said to Wang Xiaoling. Chapter 953. Standing in front of Father Chen, Wang Xiaoling looked a little nervous. After all, it was her first time, and Super Chen was already prepared for Father Wang to send her training sword flying. How could a girl have any strength? Father Chen held the wooden sword across his chest and carefully withdrew his strength. When all was said and done, Father Chen was at the foundation establishment stage. While Xiaoling had a good root bone, she had never had the opportunity to cultivate before, and now had a constitution close to that of an ordinary person, and hadn't even refined her body. If he didn't restrain his strength, his aura alone could backfire on Xiaoling, so Father Chen constantly reminded himself to conserve his strength during training. Come on, Xiaoling, Father Chen called out to Wang Xiaoling. Imitating Super Chen's posture just now, Wang Xiaoling raised her sword high and slashed at Father Chen's horizontal wooden sword. Then there was no then. Under Father Chen and Super Chen's bewildered gazes, the training sword and the wooden sword clashed with a bang. Father Chen's wooden sword was actually cut in two by Wang Xiaoling's sword. Then, Father Chen stared at the sword hilt in his hand and sucked in a cold breath. Super Chen. Dad, this is... The unexpected situation caused the father and son of the Chen family to temporarily fall into a state of suffocation. Wang Ling, who was in Wang Xiaoling's body, also fell silent. Wang Ling had overlooked something. He had used the King's Eye and Divine Art to possess Wang Xiaoling's body. Even though Wang Xiaoling didn't have a realm, his excess aura and power would still spill out of her body. Even if it was just a little bit, it wasn't something a foundation establishment cultivator could handle. Although Wang Xiaoling did not have a realm, that sword strike just now was actually mixed with her own aura. Father Chen had said before that Wang Xiaoling had a good root, and Wang Ling had actually been quite puzzled. This was because she was actually just an ordinary girl, and there was nothing special about her. In the end, he now understood why this blunder had occurred. What kind of innate talent was this? This was clearly Father Chen mistaking his overflowing aura for Wang Xiaoling's, and mistaking her for a very talented girl. So no matter how much he didn't want to admit it. But the truth was that from the moment Father Chen had invited Wang Xiaoling into the Chen family, Wang Ling had already changed Super Chen's memories. Will this affect the future? What would Super Chen's future look like because of this change? Wang Ling was worried. There was no other way. He could only continue looking down Super Chen's memory. If it really didn't work out, he could only use the crispy noodle snacks to bribe Time Heavenly Dao to rewind time to the day before he had to prepare for homework. But in this way, the boring summer vacation would have one more day. Man was such a magical creature. When they were in school, they looked forward to the holidays. Now that the holidays were over, they felt bored and wondered when school would start again. Wang Ling felt that it was better to wait and see first. And so, because of this little accident, on the first day of Super Chen and Wang Xiaoling's sword training together, the training plan was far from meeting Father Chen's standards, and ended early, because Wang Xiaoling had cleaved the wooden sword that Father Chen was using to guide her. He had actually considered whether or not he should change to another person to possess, but the overflowing aura was unavoidable. Even if it was another person, it would still cause the other person's aura to leak out. Now that he had possessed Wang Xiaoling's body, Super Chen's memories had already changed. If he switched to someone else at this time, the situation would only get messier. That night, after a tiring day, Xiaoling had already fallen asleep. Wang Ling continued to use his spiritual perception to observe Super Chen's memories in Xiaoling's body. He was a little impatient, and directly switched to watching the rest of the plot development at double speed. The lights in the main hall of the dojo were still on. and Father Chen and Super Chen were still awake. Because of Wang Xiaoling's sudden awakening, Father Chen was seriously drawing up a follow-up training plan, not only for Xiaoling, but also for Super Chen. Previously, Father Chen had thought that Xiaoling just had a good aptitude, but he never expected that he would accidentally take in such a rare talent in 100 years. The most important thing for a genius was to work hard to guide them onto the right path. Father Chen would do his best to teach Xiaoling. Father Chen, son, take off your training bracelet tomorrow and give it to Xiaoling. Super Chen was astonished. This was too real. I thought before that Xiaoling wasn't your match because you trained ahead of schedule, but today it looks like there's a gap between you and Xiaoling. But you mustn't be discouraged, understand? You have to work harder. Father Chen patted Super Chen on the shoulder solemnly. I understand, Dad. Super Chen nodded seriously. When he thought of Wang Xiaoling, he couldn't help laughing. I never thought Xiaoling would be so awesome. I wonder what Tiger Liang will think when he finds out. Xiaoling has an indifferent personality, and because of her family, she's also a little cowardly. She was bullied by Tiger Liang before and didn't dare fight back. It's hard to imagine that if Xiaoling had fought back, Tiger Liang might not have just ended up in the hospital. Father Chen murmured to Super Chen in a low voice. He knew the pros and cons of this matter. Father Chen did a quick calculation. Given Xiaoling's strength, if she had fought back against Tiger Liang before, the grass on Tiger Liang's grave would probably have been dozens of meters tall by now. Father Chen had previously wanted some disciples who wanted to learn swordsmanship to observe Super Chen and Xiaoling's training, but looking at it now, Father Chen felt that this might be risky. After that, all of Super Chen and Xiaoling's training would have to be carried out in secret after the dojo was over. A genius who showed off his abilities would attract the wind. Father Chen understood this principle. Keeping a low profile was the best way to protect Xiaoling right now. Super Chen. Father Chen suddenly looked at Super Chen and called him. Super Chen knew that when Father Chen called him by his name directly, he was talking about something very serious. You have to keep Xiaoling's matter a secret. Outsiders can't know about your training with her, understand? Father Chen instructed him very seriously, and Super Chen nodded repeatedly in agreement. Early the next morning, there were a lot of people who had made reservations at the dojo, and Father Chen could hear voices coming from the distance. Super Chen and several disciples from his dojo were chattering away. These people could be considered regular customers of the dojo, and were usually close to Super Chen. Some of the older kids in their teens often brought snacks and toys for Super Chen, and were basically good friends with him. As soon as Father Chen stepped into the dojo, he heard Super Chen imitating Bai Zhantong from My Own Legend of Martial Arts as he introduced Xiaoling to everyone in a very exaggerated tone. Super Chen. What an awe-inspiring Wang Xiaoling. She wears a purple gold crown with a 3-pronged hairpin, a red Sichuan robe embroidered with 100 flowers, a sky-practice sword in her hand, and a wind-red rabbit horse between her legs. My dad rushed over and turned to leave, but Wang Xiaoling raised her sword and slashed at him. She used force in her arms and split him in two. Father Chen. Chapter 954. It was clear that Father Chen had wanted to shave his head last time to put an end to Super Chen's fantasy of pursuing the art of voice through perming hair. This move hadn't worked. 4-year-old Super Chen had spoken this Beijing accent fluently. Who knew which crosstalk work he had stolen from? Children were very good learners, especially when it came to things they were particularly interested in. This time, Father Chen thoroughly felt like he had been tricked by Super Chen. As the saying went, it would be a waste of one's youth if one didn't trick their father. Actually, Father Chen felt that he was also responsible for this, since he hadn't clearly explained the definition of outsider to Super Chen last night. That was apart from heaven, earth, you and me, everyone else was considered an outsider. These disciples of the dojo were very close to Super Chen, and it was clear that Super Chen didn't regard them as outsiders. It was just that as soon as Father Chen stepped into the dojo, he heard Super Chen yell that he had been split in half, which felt a little weird. Great, the secret that Xiaoling was a genius could no longer be kept a secret, at least not in this dojo. Father Chen dropped his forehead into his hand. So after the morning classes, Father Chen called over the disciples who knew about this to have a heart-to-heart talk. He had to keep this a secret, but he had no idea at all. But Father Chen didn't know at all whether the secret could be kept or not. Although these disciples were regular customers of the dojo, they in fact had 2 schools. They also had to buy lessons at Liang Heng's Balance Magic Center, so their studies on both sides didn't interfere at all. Father Chen couldn't guarantee that these disciples wouldn't talk about this matter at all. Who knew when they would become snitches and spill the beans one day? And if Liang Heng found out about this, it would be very troublesome. Father Chen was thinking about this matter when he taught the students that day, and seemed a little absent-minded. Some of the disciples in the dojo who didn't know what was going on thought that the author of the novel Father Chen was following had asked for leave again, so he was in a bad mood. Did the author of Let Go of That Wet Nurse stop updating again? A disciple who didn't know the truth asked. I don't know. Before leaving the dojo, several disciples whispered to each other. Only the 3 insiders who had come in the morning couldn't hold it in any longer. At noon, Father Chen had specially talked to them, and told them not to tell anyone about Wang Xiaoling. But sometimes, keeping a secret to yourself was so unbearable that you wanted to chop someone up. Therefore, under these conditions, there was a saying that perhaps everyone had heard before. Let me tell you a secret. But you must never tell anyone. And so Wang Xiaoling's secret was leaked. Although Wang Ling was inside Wang Xiaoling's body, he had seen and heard everything clearly with his king's eye's omniscient view. That night, the gloomy Father Chen turned his attention to decompressing. Everyone was stressed, and had their own way of decompressing. And Father Chen's way of decompressing was very simple. Here, Wang Ling learned another of Father Chen's secrets. It turned out that Father Chen was also a fan of Father Wang. In the evening, the book Father Chen was reading was Let Go of That Wet Nurse, which Father Wang had started writing 12 years ago, and had only just been completed with 10 million words. But at that time, Father Wang's book hadn't been serialized for long, and he hadn't signed a contract with a great god, so his overall number of fans definitely couldn't compare to what it would have 12 years later. No one could have expected that 12 years later, Father Wang would rely on this book to become a god, to become rich, and even the head of state would become his fan. Wang Ling never thought that he would actually alarm both his fathers at the same time. Father Chen was now worried about Wang Xiaoling's secret being leaked. And Father Wang had actually written it because he was worried about himself. Mother Wang had in fact gone into seclusion when Wang Ling was 3 or 4 years old. Before Wang Ling had created the Dao Talisman seal to limit his strength, the Wang family's furniture had been destroyed, and Mother Wang's royalties and Father Wang's income from working couldn't support the family at all. Thus, Father Wang had secretly conceived the idea of writing books to supplement the family's income. In the end, heaven knew that once Let Go of That Wet Nurse reached 260,000 words, it would directly become one of the top 10 best-selling books. After that, it was time for Father Wang to come clean. He told Mother Wang the truth, then quit his job to write books full-time to support the family. Not long after that, Mother Wang also went into seclusion to wholeheartedly take care of Wang Ling, guide him and educate him. The couple could be said to have gone to great lengths for Wang Ling. That night, Wang Xiaoling was kneading plasticine, which Super Chen had given her when she had first arrived yesterday. Super Chen, on the other hand, was playing a game console. Halfway through the game, the alarm on his phone watch suddenly rang. He casually tossed the game console to one side, and then took out an e-book from a drawer. Wang Xiaoling's expression was clearly a little puzzled. Super Chen smiled at Wang Xiaoling. It's time to learn the art of language. Wang Ling was stupefied. As it turned out, he had actually learned the art of language. He watched as Super Chen opened the reading page of the e-book, and sure enough, in the end, he opened Let Go of That Wet Nurse. Super Chen actually didn't know what he should read, so he added the books on his dad's bookshelf to his own. But he couldn't find a book called by Jia, but it didn't matter. Super Chen now had more than 10 books for the summer break, and the first one was Let Go of That Wet Nurse. After reading more than 10 books, it would be enough for him to touch the gateway to the art of language. He was only 4 years old, and there were a lot of words that he didn't recognize, but the e-book had an electronic reading function. Just like that, Father Wang's online novel was read out by a very creepy electronic broadcast. Wang Ling's comment was, "Dry and extremely chinibu." After all, this was the web. When you read some words silently, you could imagine the protagonist's mood and the scene in which the words were spoken, and it might feel good. But when you read it out loud, you might get goosebumps all over. Halfway through the chapter, the electronic voice suddenly paused. Superchin thought that the software had crashed, but in the end he saw a string of streamers hovering over the top of the reading page. "Wow, so much money! A nouveau riche has come," 4-year-old Superchin exclaimed. Although he hadn't been studying the web for long, he had clearly done some homework and knew what a tip meant. But Superchin then realized that this huge tip wasn't for Father Wang. 12 years ago, as a fledgling newcomer, Father Wang's sales had skyrocketed, subscriptions and monthly votes had increased dramatically. Now that the year was coming to an end, it was natural for him to choose that year's newcomer of the year. A single tip of more than 10,000 yuan would be directly pinned to the top of the software. This was equivalent to 1 million yuan in book currency. And this string of 1 million yuan that had just appeared was for another guru. This was an advertisement, and also a show of strength that these gurus had given Father Wang in order to compete for the title of best author back then. Chapter 955. There were a lot of big shots back then, and the most famous author was called Zhu Ge. Everyone knew that Father Wang's pen name was Wang Situ. Father Wang actually hadn't thought much about the name back then. He had no idea at all that there was a guru author called Zhu Ge on the internet. In the end, as soon as he published his book under this pen name, he was bombarded by Zhu Ji's fans. They felt that Father Wang was leeching off Zhu Ji's popularity and declaring war on Guru Zhu Ge. At that time, because of the clash of pen names, Father Wang's first book had attracted a lot of attention. As a result, these trolls had read Father Wang's book, and as they read and read, they had suddenly become Wang Jingza. Not only had this not trampled on Father Wang, it had even helped his new book rise. And just like that, the two of them had become enemies. In short, Zhu Ge had definitely been a famous guru on the website back then, with countless fans and countless nouveau riche among them. He would receive all kinds of gifts all day long. There was even a rumor that he was an old author from the same period as the 5 heroes of the Central Plains, and that this Zhu Ge was just a new sock puppet. Logically speaking, gurus naturally wouldn't take a newcomer like Father Wang seriously. They weren't on the same level of fans, and Zhu Ge hadn't cared at all before. But all of a sudden, Father Wang's results came up. The battle for the best author king at the end of the year instantly silenced all the veteran guru authors. What they feared the most every year was nothing more than a newcomer taking the top spot. And a strong one at that. For a moment, a lot of people were speculating about Father Wang's background, and whether he was connected to the station's leader, or whether he was some nouveau riche who had done his own research. But Father Wang's wet nurse was really popular, and the number of comments in the comment section was already on the verge of overtaking that of the veteran gurus. There were times when the number of comments was a key factor in whether a serialized book was popular or not. And on this point, it could be said that Father Wang was almost invulnerable. Apart from that, the number of people who had gifted Father Wang was also unprecedentedly high, which instantly panicked Guru Zhu Ge. How could a veteran guru gather his fans to cheer for him at a critical moment, and obediently cast his monthly votes? In many cases, many authors would choose to act pitiful. For example, there were people with green lights above their heads, claiming that their girlfriend ran away with someone else. In fact, she didn't. They were heartbroken, and if they didn't have monthly votes, they would stop updating and commit suicide. Another example was a person called Ku Xian who was naughty on the internet every day and got his leg broken. What was worse was that even if he sold it, no one would vote for him. Therefore, it was actually a trick for authors to act pitiful. This was a legendary marketing method. However, in many cases, it also depended on the person to act pitifully. This trick was only used by the Almighty. No one would even read an ordinary author's pitiful act. Superchen had been 4 years old at the same time as Wang Ling. Wang Ling had only heard about what Father Wang had experienced back then, but hadn't experienced it himself. But looking at the current timeline in his memory, It seemed that this was when Father Wang had competed with Zhu Ge as Wang Situ. That night, Wang Ling knew he had something to eat. The next day, Father Chen arrived very early, but he wasn't in a good state of mind. He pushed back his classes for the whole day and arranged for another day. Wang Ling was in Wang Xiaoling's body. Wang Xiaoling and Super Chen were clearly a little bewildered, and didn't know what Father Chen was doing. Later, a group of people came to the dojo, and their faces were just as bad. Each of them had dark circles under their eyes, as if they had just returned from a smoke-filled battlefield. Super Chen knew that there was an 80% chance that he wouldn't be able to go to class today. From the looks of it, it seemed that Father Chen had made an appointment with someone else to do something big in the dojo. There were 5 people in total, and each of them had a bag on their back. When they arrived at the dojo, they consciously took off their shoes at the entrance and carried their bags inside. Inside the dojo, Father Chen had already prepared several tables. The 5 of them put their bags on the table and took out a few thick laptops. Then they reached out and plugged in the network cable. Then they plugged in the network cable and sat down at the tables to log in. "Are you all ready?" Father Chen stared at them. "Reporting Chief Chen." "Everything is ready," the 5 of them said in unison. Super Chen hadn't figured out what was going on at first, but when he saw them open the homepage of Let Go of That Wet Nurse, he instantly understood. Super Chen. "Dad, you're doing this for?" Father Chen. "That's right. It's all for justice." Wang Ling. Super Chen. Father Chen knew that he couldn't hide it, so he said truthfully, "Son, you should know that I've been following a book called Let Go of That Wet Nurse. Last night, another guru called Zhu Ge made a big splash online in order to fight for the top spot. His monthly votes have now completely surpassed Wang Situ's novel. As a fan, your dad will fight for Wang Situ today." Super Chen fan? Even Wang Ling was startled. He had thought that Father Chen was just an ordinary reader, and never thought that he would actually be Wang Situ's fan back then. Wang Ling was now imagining a scenario. After all, it was grenade-throwing senior immortal who took his place at the parent-teacher conference at number 60 high school. If Father Wang really went to the parent-teacher conference, it would be even better if he ran into Father Chen. This exchange between the two of them would be a proper fan meet and greet. Fan leader means the leader of the fans. In order to fight for Guru Wang Situ's monthly votes, I, your dad, am prepared to contribute all my private savings. Father Chen said, "These 5 fan group leaders and I have been busy since last night. Today, we're here to help Guru Wang Situ fight for the top spot. Currently, together with my private savings and the funds raised by various major fans, we have a total of 200,000. 200,000. Super Chen was astonished. This was a rather large sum of money. Although Super Chen was only 4 years old, he still had an idea of numbers, since he would count the red packets he received every year. He only received 10,000 each year, and this sum of 200,000 was equivalent to 20 years' worth. Just thinking about it, Super Chen felt that this was an enormous sum. Online monthly votes cost 5 yuan per red packet through the official website. It would be cheaper if he took the illegal route and bought it in bulk from stores that did data marketing. However, that would be considered as buying tickets. Father Chen and the other fan group leaders had been busy since last night to discuss how they would fight for the top spot today. 200,000. In the end, they decided to use it all to send red packets. In fact, this battle for best author and monthly votes had only just begun. It was also this battle that thoroughly opened the door to the art of language for Super Chen. Chapter 956. This was going to be a tough battle, and the fans on both sides were already ready to go. Father Chen had actually already contributed a lot of monthly votes last night, and had even canvassed votes for Wet Nurse in all the major forums to promote the book. However, Father Chen very quickly realized that while it was easy to think about it, it was much more difficult to execute. In less than half an hour, all his posts had been completely blocked, and anything that mentioned voting had been wiped out. Father Chen was well aware that this was most likely the work of Zhu Ji's forces. Because of the book's resources, the veteran gurus had strong relationships with the bosses of many literary forums. Back then, Zhu Ge had been in a position of power, and a phone call to offer some benefits to help suppress wet nurse would help Father Chen reduce his investment in the monthly votes battle. Super Chen. Father Chen looked at Super Chen and said very solemnly, "You mustn't tell your mom about this." Super Chen. Wang Ling. Sure enough, every man's pain was the same. Actually, spending money wasn't the main thing. The main thing was hiding his secret stash. 200,000 yuan of his secret stash was all invested in supporting his idol. What kind of electricity was this? It was simply comparable to Pikachu's 100,000 volts. If he was caught hiding his secret stash, he would really be struck by lightning. When his wife got angry, the pressure would be no less than the heavenly Tao tribulation. Wang Ling possessed Wang Xiaoling's body. Although he had changed Super Chen's memories, Wang Xiaoling still had her own consciousness. She was a quiet and well-behaved girl, but because of her family environment, she was a little introverted, which wasn't something that could be changed in a short period of time. But Wang Ling could clearly sense the change in Wang Xiaoling's mood. After she came to the dojo, her relationship with Super Chen had become a lot closer. According to the settings, Wang Ling felt that Wang Xiaoling was most likely the female lead in Super Chen's life. There was no training today, so Father Chen ordered curry egg rice takeaway for Wang Xiaoling and Super Chen, and the two kids ate quietly on one side. On Father Chen's side, the battle work had officially begun. Tally up the number of people online at the moment. Father Chen took a deep breath, sorted out his emotions, and started to direct the fans on wet nurse's side. It was said that one's morale was boosted by the first drum, weakened by the second, and exhausted by the third. The momentum at the beginning was very important. Father Chen knew that it would be a tough battle to bring down Guru Zhu Ge. In the end, Father Wang had a limited number of fans, and he didn't have a professional marketing team to help him promote his products. He was far inferior to Zhu Ge in all aspects. However, humans must have some dreams. What if he succeeded? I've already done a head count last night. The total number of people in our 5 groups is currently more than 8,000. There will be more people at night. Right now, there are only about 4,000 people online this early in the morning. The peak last night was more than 7,000. A bald guy with a sports scarf on his head reported the situation. It was only later that Wang Ling learned that this person was also an old white reader of the website called Lin Gang. He had been reading for more than 20 years, and was one of the first fans to support Father Wang's Wang Situ pen name. Among the 5 group leaders, Lin Gang's group had the largest number of members, and it was almost full. The maximum number of members in the group was around 1,990. Most of them were active fans. Alright, let's get started then. How many accounts do you have? I did a head count in the group yesterday, and we currently have more than 400 accounts. Only 400? Father Chen frowned. Compared with the total number of people, this number was really a little low. But Father Chen could actually understand. When all was said and done, reading accounts were private things, and these people who were willing to donate their accounts were already very good at cooking. I've already set up the login software for the accounts. We just need to import them in batches. Also, IPs can be changed automatically. However, there's a limit on how many monthly votes each account can spend on a book each month, and you can subscribe to a maximum of 5 monthly votes. The only thing left is to give out red packets for monthly votes, said Lin Gang. Not good. Wang Situ is about to fall out of the top 10. Saying this, the other group leaders opened the ranking list and cried out in alarm. He was clearly in the top 5 last night. Father Chen also opened the ranking list and took a look. The current situation was indeed not optimistic. The gap in the votes was even wider than last night. Zhu Ji's Shameless was currently in first place with more than 36,000 votes. Let Go of That Wet Nurse, written by Father Wang under the pen name Wang Situ, was currently in 10th place with 19,000 votes. 9th place had more than 20,000 votes. And 11th place's votes were very close to Father Wang's. Father Chen knew that this wasn't going to be easy to deal with, but the arrow had to be fired. There's no other way. We can only give it a try. Even if we can't win first place, we have to stabilize Wang Situ's position in the top 3. Blue veins popped on Father Chen's forehead, and he was actually a little angry in his heart. He was also an old reader of the website, and the gap in the votes on the ranking list was so obvious all of a sudden. Father Chen knew very well whether or not someone had tampered with the numbers. Although they didn't have many accounts, they were all borrowed from fans, and they were official accounts. However, in the end, there were still very few fans who were willing to lend out their accounts. As Lin Gang said, each account had a voting limit. In terms of sales alone, Wet Nurse was #1 online. In contrast, Zhu Ji's Shameless had almost fallen out of the top 10 in the sales chart, but its monthly votes were still higher than Father Wang's. As for the reason behind it, the old readers knew it very well. The other party must have found an online marketing store. The number of accounts in the marketing store was huge, and much more than what they had borrowed. Moreover, some of the accounts were stolen, and they would go offline after casting their monthly votes or subscriptions. Sometimes, when readers logged into their own accounts, they would find that their book coins, monthly votes, or recommendation votes had mysteriously disappeared. This was one of the reasons. So, after collecting the fan accounts and funds, the first thing Father Chen did was to give 10,000 yuan in flashing red tips. This was to attract the attention of the entire website. In addition to a web-wide announcement, there was also a reward from a treasure chest, which was similar to a red envelope. Readers could snatch red envelopes from treasure chests and split up the huge amount of book coins. This was also the time when the number of people was the highest. On Father Wang's behalf, Father Chen posted the vote request announcement which he had prepared beforehand in the book review and comments section. Although Zhu Ge had used some marketing methods to release a lot of negative news about Father Wang's Wet Nurse these days, Father Chen didn't mention any of these rumors and slanders. His announcement was very sincere, and wasn't trying to act pitiful or clever. It was just the most basic way of asking for monthly votes. Father Chen and the others had already discussed this matter with Father Wang online early in the morning. 1,000 monthly votes plus 1 chapter. This was Father Chen's current offer. Of 200,000 yuan. Father Chen first spent 10,000 yuan to attract the attention of the entire website. And now, the real battle for monthly votes had finally begun. Sogu Reading Website. Chapter 957. As the battle began, the 6 of them worked together to canvass votes and give out red packets for monthly votes. In a short period of time, Father Wang's book review and comment section grew more and more people. It didn't matter if they came for the red envelope treasure chest, saw the advertisement, or were recommended by fans. This was undoubtedly the best time to release an update to gain attention. Father Wang wasn't in the habit of stockpiling drafts, so after deciding to fight for the top spot last night, he had prepared for it overnight. In one breath, he posted the 6 chapters of 3,000 words that he had written since yesterday. But Father Wang knew that this wasn't the end, and he couldn't rest. If he wanted to compete for the top spot, a mere 18,000 words weren't enough at all. Other than that, he also had to ensure the quality of the new chapters. That was the way to go. Around noon, Father Wang's monthly votes rebounded, and his ranking rose again. He was now in 5th place with 24,000 votes. But while Father Wang seemed to be catching up, Zhu Ge hadn't stopped updating during this period. He hadn't updated as much as Father Wang, although he had also updated 6 chapters. Although each chapter was only 2,000 words, it still aroused the fanatical reading interest of the fans. The #1 villager Zhu Ge is really cunning. He posted 6 chapters of 2,000 words. The corners of Father Chen's mouth twitched. He knew that Zhu Ge was demonstrating his power to them. Furthermore, after they went to the forum to ask for votes last night, Zhu Ge was probably already on guard, and had also prepared for battle. Super Chen and Wang Ling watched as Father Chen worked so hard that his forehead was beaded with sweat, and at the same time, their hearts tightened. Super Chen was also one of the small readers of Wet Nurse. As he watched Chen vote, he also took out his ebook to keep an eye on the changes in the ranking, his blood boiling as he cheered him on the side. Wang Situ, you can do it. Wang Situ charge. It was only now that Super Chen somewhat understood how powerful the charm of the art of language was. A single book could actually trigger a battle between tens of thousands of people. This kind of scene might be hard for ordinary people to imagine, But Superchin was only a 4-year-old child. His imagination was very strong, and he immediately imagined a battlefield of tens of thousands of people, many people holding dictionaries in their hands like bricks, smashing each other's faces. The scene was filled with the sound of gongs and drums and the sound of firecrackers. Wang Ling actually knew a little more than Superchun about the rules of the ranking list. He also knew about it, but he didn't look at Father Wang's. It wasn't that he didn't support her as a son. There were 2 reasons. First, the protagonist in Father Wang's novel didn't eat crispy noodle snacks. Secondly, it was very easy for him to think of the protagonist in Father Wang's novel as Father Wang. This was a very bad experience. Therefore, under normal circumstances, if a person was very familiar with an author, they would not go back. He didn't know if other people felt this way, but at the very least, Wang Ling did. Reading the writings of the people around him, especially the people closest to him, gave him a strange feeling. Actually, Wang Ling knew what the outcome of this ranking fight would be. But there was also uncertainty about Wang Ling. When all was said and done, he had changed Superchen's memories, so he didn't know how this small change would affect the outcome of the best newcomer king. Wang Ling remembered that back then, Father Wang had won the title of best newcomer king, and in the end had crushed him with a large number of votes. After that, Father Wang won the monthly votes for 6 years in a row, which could be said to be unprecedented. In the 7th year, Father Wang didn't want to compete anymore. At the authors' annual conference, several authors had given Father Wang red packets and begged him to update a little slower. That way, they would still have the strength to fight for the top spot. And so, in the 7th year, Father Wang went a little easy, of course. Father Wang returned the red packets. He had to care about his peers' reputation, and also give some people a chance to compete. In the end, it wouldn't be good to be too rigid. At that moment, the other group leaders, led by Lin Gang, were also sweating profusely. They were pondering the publicity plan and posting on various forums to ask for votes. Keep working hard, Father Chen encouraged them. How much money do we have left? Lin Gang asked. Not much. Including the tips and votes we just received, we have 100,000 left, Father Chen said. So fast? Omega, Lin Gang and the others were stunned. Sure enough, the monthly votes ranking really wasn't something small authors could play around with. They had no right to fight for the top spot at all. Burning tens of thousands of yuan at the drop of a hat was too exaggerated. They were a little disheartened. They knew that Zhu Ge was still observing and hadn't gone all out. Today was the last day of December, and there was still half a day left until the New Year's bell rang in the wee hours of the morning. They had spent almost half of their funds to reach 5th place in the ranking, and there was still plenty of time left. What should they do? However, this wasn't the worst news. While Father Chen was pondering how to make the most of his last 100,000 yuan, a string of rainbow-colored stickers suddenly appeared at the top of the reading shelf. This was a full 10 million book coins. 100,000 yuan. F***K. Which nouveau riche? Which book did you tip? Everyone was stunned by the red sticker. They clicked on the prize chest, and were dazzled by the titles in front of them. It's Zhu Ji's Shameless. Lin Gang felt deflated in an instant. Which nouveau riche? Everyone looked for the nouveau riche's ID again. In the end, they turned pale with fright. F***K. Dark Governor Lady 13. Lady 13? Lady 13 is also reading Zhu Ji's Shameless? In the dojo, everyone sucked in a cold breath. They never expected Zhu Ge to actually pull in this godly nouveau riche, Dark Governor Lady 13. She was the biggest nouveau riche on the Cultivation Reading Network, and also the ringleader of all the readers. Basically, books recommended by Dark Governor Lady 13 would attract countless people to read. A recommendation from Lady 13 was no less powerful than a recommendation spot on Qidian. Because she settled in Yu City, her ID was actually Dark Governor Lady 13 at first. Later, because she had too many followers, she became a female governor among fans. Thus, Dark Governor Lady 13 was changed from governor. That was right, as her ID suggested. Dark Governor Lady 13 was a woman. Rumor had it that her family controlled a financial group with unimaginable wealth, and was deeply connected to Huaguo Water Curtain Group. For Lady 13, this 100,000 yuan was just a small red packet she had casually tipped out, and wasn't worth mentioning at all. It's all over, Lin Gang said in frustration. At that moment, Father Chen also felt his whole body relax. He felt in his pocket and took out a pack of cigarettes, feeling a little vexed. Dark Governor Lady 13 had taken a side, and on Zhu Ji's side at that. It could almost be said that they had no chance of winning this battle. Sogu reading URL. Chapter 958. Dark Governor Lady 13's appearance attracted the attention of a large number of people on the website. They couldn't help but click their tongues. Zhu Ji's Shameless and Father Wang's Wet Nurse were released almost at the same time. Both books were in the top 10 in terms of sales, with Father Wang's book even topping the best-selling list. But even so, Dark Governor Lady 13 didn't take any sides. She didn't give any comments on either book, let alone any tips. At first, many people thought that Lady 13 was preparing for something big. They waited for a whole month, but they didn't expect that Lady 13 would start to make her move on the last day of the month. She even sided with God Zhuge. Father Chen and the others had been working hard all morning, and the readers who had come to the book review and comments section to join in on the fun were practically sucked away in an instant. Old bastard Zhuge. Too cunning. Father Chen and the others never expected the other party to actually have such a tycoon. On the other side, at the Balance Magic Dojo, the closed sign at the entrance was extremely obvious. The Balance Dao Gymnasium was closed today as well. There was a long table inside, filled with all kinds of fruits, wine, and dishes. Liang Heng sat on one side of the long table, while some youths sat on both sides of the table. They were the representatives of the major fan groups of Zhuge's camp. Yes, Liang Heng was a fan of Zhuge. The truth was that Liang Heng didn't watch the internet, but Father Chen did. He knew that Father Chen had been voting for Wang Situ's book all this time. Now that Wang Situ and Zhuge were rivals, Liang Heng naturally had to stand on Zhu Ji's side and compete with Father Chen. Ever since he met Chen Yi, as long as he wanted something, Liang Heng had never failed, including that female teacher who had taken a fancy to Chen Yi during his university days. So what if they were teachers and students? In the end, hadn't he still managed to seduce her and give birth to Tiger Liang? Now, with Lady 13's generous donation of 100,000, Zhu Ji's votes were far ahead on the list. Ha ha ha. Now, even if Wang Situ wants to keep up, I'm afraid he won't be able to. In the end, it's still our Zhuge's veteran. He's just a newcomer and has so few fans. How can he compete with our boss? This year's Rookie King is none other than our Master Zhuge. In the Balance Dojo, the group leaders cheered. They were already celebrating the joy of victory in advance. The few of them picked up the cans of beer beside them and clinked them together. They were in a good mood. At the same time, it was a pity that Dark Governor Lady 13 did not appear in person. Previously, Liang Heng had also invited Dark Governor Lady 13 to the scene. The seat at the other end of the long table had been specially reserved for her. However, Lady 13 said that her company had a reunion dinner tonight, so she couldn't make it in time. Liang Heng hadn't read Zhu Ji's Shameless, but his spending on the internet was no less than Zhu Ji's. He had already donated more than 100,000 yuan. This was Liang Heng's private stash of money he had saved up over the years. Whatever Father Chen had rewarded him, he would double it. He had seen Father Chen at a university meet and greet last time, and had secretly noted down Father Chen's reader ID. From that moment onwards, he had been planning a comprehensive plan. When all is said and done, Lady 13 is a girl, and a rich heiress at that. Although I politely declined, I know that the other party won't show up so easily. Liang Heng smiled faintly. Besides, no one has seen Lady 13's real face. I know this about women, they need to be mysterious. I heard that Chief Liang spoke to Lady 13? A group leader asked. That's right. Liang Heng nodded. In order to help Guru Zhuge compete for Rookie King this time, I spoke to Lady 13 once. It was a cute and sexy little sister with a very cute voice. As expected of Chief Liang has seen countless women. To be able to speak to Lady 13 through the phone, I think Chief Liang must be the first among readers. Ha ha ha. You flatter me. But please don't let my wife know about this. Liang Heng still had a very sociopathic smile on his face. Of course. We all know that. Don't worry, Chief Liang. I'm helping Guru Zhuge compete for Rookie King this time. Firstly, it's to help advertise my Balance Magic Center. Secondly, it's also to avenge my son's grievances. You should have already heard me say in the group that the barbaric father and son of Strength Super Dojo rewarded my son. Liang Heng said it casually, but in fact everyone knew the truth of the matter if they asked around a little. But these group leaders knew that Liang Heng was a nouveau riche and wasn't to be offended. Furthermore, Liang Heng was on very good terms with Lady 13 now. Many of these people would need to open books in the future. If they could build a good relationship with Liang Heng and get Lady 13 to recommend books for them on the website, their basic income would be guaranteed. Every industry had its own circle and its own rules. These group leaders were very familiar with the rules. They were already part of society, and naturally had to do things according to society's rules. Don't ask what you shouldn't ask. Don't listen to what you shouldn't. But sometimes, maybe the truth wasn't what it seemed on the surface. On the other side, Father Chen knew that it was time for the first spurt of energy, the second decline, and the third exhaustion to come. They had been busy all morning and noon, but in the end, the result wasn't satisfactory. As soon as Lady 13 appeared, everyone's attention was drawn to her. For Zhuge to be able to attract so many readers with a historical novel, he was indeed a pretty amazing person. What should we do? Brother Chen, is there no other way? Asked Lin Gang, the leader of Wet Nurse's fan group. Many of our forum posts have been banned. That Zhuge and the administrators of those literary forums are pretty good. There's no longer a place for us Wet Nurse fans in those literary forums. Father Chen frowned. What about the other forums? The other forums don't attract readers, so I'm afraid we won't be able to attract them. Father Chen raised his concerns. But, at that moment, Super Chen suddenly said, but what if some sect leader takes a liking to us? After Super Chen said this, everyone turned to look at him. Sect leader? Would any sect leader come? They didn't know, they hadn't tried. But when it came to a forum where sect leaders gathered and a lot of cultivation gossip, Father Chen and the group leaders immediately thought of one place. The cultivation forum. The leader of that forum was the legendary Great Death-Courting Senior, Grenade-Throwing Senior Immortal. Chapter 959. The first time he had met Grenade-Throwing Senior Immortal, he had actually still been very young, but what surprised him was that the seeds of fate had actually been sown inexorably when he was 4 years old. Cultivation Forum. This was a place that specialized in gossiping in the cultivation circle. Indeed, it was a place that the sect masters and people in charge of the major sects would visit. But would they really go? Or surf the internet? Everyone found it hard to believe. Furthermore, they remembered that it was very troublesome to register an account on the cultivation forum. They had to answer many questions that were related to cultivation correctly. Furthermore, there was a time limit for these questions, and if they failed to answer within the time limit, they would be considered to have given the wrong answer. There were a total of 100 questions, and he would have to answer 80 of them correctly to get the registration invitation code. Although there seemed to be a lot of questions, if it was a senior cultivator, they would be able to choose them with their eyes closed. It was clearly impossible for them to compete with Lady 13, who was a godly tycoon on the reading website, unless Father Chen used his family's savings. But Father Chen was sure that as soon as he took the money out, his wife would chop off his hands and kneel on a washboard. Father Chen rested his forehead on his hand. He knew that now might not be the time to give up. Come on, let's try one last time. The first step was to register an account. I'll answer the questions. If I don't know the answer, you guys will be responsible for helping me search. Father Chen had a lot of faith in the hand speed of these group leaders. After all, they were all single now, and their decades of hand speed couldn't be underestimated in the era of national cultivation. The age of being single had also increased, because the lifespan of cultivators had generally increased. The lifespan of a foundation establishment cultivator was 200 to 300 years, and the few people in front of them were all nearly 100 years old golden bachelors. That's the only way. Let's try one last time. Lin Gang was also encouraged by Father Chin. Just like that, a group of people started to try their best to register for cultivation forum accounts. Father Chin opened the registration page, and 100 questions instantly appeared in front of him. There were a total of 50 yes or no questions and 50 true or false questions. The difficulty of the questions was also progressively higher. Question 1. Multiple choice. When a staff member of the cultivation forum visits, which sentence should the staff member say to show his or her identity? A. Chris, close the door. B. I'm here to fix your air conditioner. C. Hello, this is a staff member of the cultivation forum. Employee ID, XXXD. Lu Benway really didn't cheat. Father Chin deliberately didn't answer, and then looked at the time. The 2-minute time limit had already started. How is it? Is it difficult? Lin Gang asked. The difficulty of the questions increases step by step. The first question is common sense, and it's very easy, Father Chin replied. The first question was relatively easy. Father Chin chose C, and then immediately jumped to the next question. Question 2. Multiple choice. Wang Xiaoming is an early building foundation stage cultivator. During an experiential learning, he accidentally fell off the cliff of purgatory. It is known that Wang Xiaoming's weight is 90 kilograms and the depth of the cliff is 10,000 meters. He fell at an acceleration of 10 meters per second. In the process of falling off the cliff, Wang Xiaoming successively broke 2 crooked trees on the cliff, and once again accelerated. Moreover, Wang Xiaoming tried to grab onto the protruding rocks on the cliff during his fall, but he failed repeatedly. May I ask what was the final cause of Wang Xiaoming's death? A. Die of fright. B. Fall off a cliff and deek. Run into a tree and died. Poisoned to death. Father Chin. Wang Ling, Super Chin. Damn it. This is a F*** king question for a human. It's not just a little more difficult. Holding his head, Father Chin couldn't help ridiculing, feeling like his brain was hurting. Choose D. On the other side, Lin Gang had already quickly found the answer with his fingers. Why D? The cliff of purgatory. The entire cliff is contaminated with a poisonous miasma all year round, and is extremely toxic. He won't die if he runs into a tree twice to slow down. But if he falls off the cliff, he'll definitely be poisoned to death, Lin Gang explained. After hearing this, Father Chin realized that they were almost out of time, so he hurriedly answered. Then came the third question. In order to save time, Father Chin read the question aloud as he examined it. Question 3. Yes/no. As we all know, the soul substitution spell in the demonic path is a powerful demonic secret spell. The soul of the victim will be temporarily swapped with that of the nearest person, and can only be broken if a third person kisses one of them. It was known that Wang Xiaoming's girlfriend and mother-in-law were watching The Devil's Temptation, but the CD had already been engraved with a magic array by the demonic path. After the male lead of the TV series said, "You're so slutty," the two of them were hit by the soul substitution spell. In order to break the spell, Wang Xiaoming hit on the head in a moment of desperation and knocked out his girlfriend's body, and then kissed his mother. Question. After this incident, will Wang Xiaoming survive? Father Chin. Wang Ling. Super Chin. Very quickly Lin Gang found the answer. Choose no. Father Chin. His girlfriend's body is his mother's, so he knocked her out and kissed his mother, which was the same as kissing his girlfriend. Isn't that the right thing to do? Lin Gang. The explanation online is that he knocked out his own mother for his wife, and after she woke up, she started to quarrel with his wife. In the end, the male lead couldn't bear the burden, and jumped off a cliff to his death. Oh, by the way, I've already answered the second question. Father Chin. Wang Ling. Super Chin. By the time Father Chin finished answering all the questions, it was already 6 o'clock in the evening. Because Father Wang's updates had been very impressive, he had gained a lot more monthly votes during this period, but there was still a gap between him and Zhu Guo at the top of the list. Now the gap was 50,000 votes. Father Chen and the others looked at the ranking list and knew that Zhu Ji's side had officially gone all out. After 11:30 in the evening, it was likely that Zhu Ji's side would go all out again to secure their position. This is our last resort. Father Chen directly spent several hundred HNY on the cultivation forum to become an annual member, and then posted the promotional article which he had prepared beforehand on the forum, along with a link to the original version and the first few chapters for free. To Father Chen's surprise, he received a reply to his post very quickly. Sect leader of Heavenly Xian Sect Han Ren. What the hell? Nowadays, they're even advertising in our cultivation forum? The administrator doesn't care? I'm Uncle Cat. Uncle Cat was the idea of this forum administrator. Very quickly, more and more people began to at this Uncle Cat and ask him to delete the post. Sect leader of Star Killer Sect Song Kaihua. I don't read the internet, it's all the same and boring. Quickly delete the post. I'm Uncle Cat, sect leader of Tyrant Earth Sect Zhang Jida. There's actually someone who dares to advertise in our forum? I'm Uncle Cat. What should we do? Should we withdraw for now? Post it later? If this ID gets banned, we'll have answered for nothing. Even if we're muted for a few hours, it's not worth it. Lin Gang saw that the situation wasn't good. Let's wait a little longer. Father Chen was also very nervous. A few minutes later, this administrator called Uncle Cat appeared. He posted a reply. Sorry everyone, I answered late. It's mainly because I was reading this novel just now. I actually think it's pretty good. A lot of people raised question marks at Uncle Cat's reply. But very quickly, Father Chen saw that the people who had requested to delete the post earlier had all deleted their original replies. Sect leader of Heavenly Xian Sect Han Ren. What the hell? It's really pretty good. Don't delete this post. I want to read it. Sect leader of Tyrant Earth Sect Zhang Jida. It's actually a little different from what I know about the internet. I can study it. Sect leader of Star Killer Sect Song Kaihua. It's delicious. Father Chen, Lin Gang, Wang Ling, Super Chen. That you're tuning into the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.